I used to dread the sound of the post at the door, not because I awaited good news, but because I feared what it might contain. Another envelope, another demand, another reminder, written in cold ink that I was, once again, behind. There was a time when I would rise in the morning with a weight already upon my chest, as though the day had begun in debt, before I had even taken my first breath. I would lie there in the half-light, not yet fully awake, and already my mind would begin its accounting. Numbers would assemble themselves before me, like judges. Rent, bills, obligations. Promises made in better times now come due. Faces of men who expected payment. Ledgers that did not forget. And there is a peculiar cruelty in numbers, for they do not shout, they do not accuse, they simply remain, silent, immovable, waiting. I know what it is to feel that life has been reduced to columns of figures, to feel that your worth has been measured, weighed, and found insufficient by the balance of a book. I know what it is to carry with you, through every hour of the day, the quiet dread that tomorrow may bring a letter you cannot answer, a knock you cannot welcome, a request you cannot fulfill, and perhaps you have known this also. Perhaps you have ever watched the postman approach and felt your stomach tighten without reason you could explain. Perhaps you have ever opened an envelope with trembling hands, hoping for mercy and finding none. Perhaps you have ever sat alone in the evening, the house grown still, and wondered how it is that you pray, and yet nothing changes. If you have ever felt the shame of unpaid obligation, if you have ever grown weary of promising yourself that next month will be different, if you have ever asked in the silence of night, how long must I live like this? Then you will understand what I am about to tell you. For there came a night when I ceased asking, a night when I no longer begged for relief from the burden of debt, a night when I discovered that the change I sought was not to be found in greater effort, nor in more careful planning, nor in the favor of chance, but in the quiet and invisible movement of my own being. Until the night when I learned to speak, not as one who hoped, but as one who already possessed. Until the night when I stopped pleading with the world, and began to declare within myself, for I tell you now, the relief you seek will not come by struggle, it will not come by anxious calculation, it will not come by the endless turning over of figures in the mind. It will come when you discover that what binds you is not the debt itself, but the state from which you view it. Tonight I will show you how to change that state. Tonight I will show you how to enter into a condition of consciousness in which the burden is already lifted. Hear this while you sleep, and watch all debts dissolve from your world, as shadows dissolve when the light is turned upon them. I do not speak of magic. I do not speak of chance. I speak of law. A law as faithful as gravity, as certain as the dawn. You are not asked to labor for hours. You are not asked to repeat endless affirmations. You are not asked to convince anyone but yourself. You are asked only to assume a state and to feel it as real. Stay with me tonight. Do not turn away, because what I say sounds too simple, for it is the very simplicity of this law that causes most to miss it. Before you sleep, I will give you the inner act. I will give you the command. I will give you the state in which the burden cannot remain. And if you will but carry that state with you into the silence of sleep, the world you wake to will begin to rearrange itself in obedience to it. For the outer world is not the cause of your distress. It is the echo of an inner conversation long forgotten. And tonight, we shall change that conversation. In this teaching tonight, I am not asking you to believe in anything that is outside of you. I am asking you to observe that which is already within you. For there is a power in man which he uses morning, noon, and night, though he does not know that he uses it. A power so constant, so intimate, that it goes unnoticed precisely because it is always present. And it is by the correct use of this power that every burden may be lifted, every chain broken, every condition altered, not by force, but by assumption. Tonight you will learn the power of the word, not the word spoken aloud to impress another, but the word silently accepted within yourself as true. You will learn the feeling that must lie behind the word if it is to take root in the deeper mind. For a word without feeling is but a sound that fades, but a word clothed in feeling becomes a seed planted in the womb of reality. You will learn the secret dialogue that goes on within you all day, the inner conversation which, though unheard by others, shapes every circumstance of your life. For man does not see what he wishes to see. He sees what he has already accepted as true within himself. You will learn why the simple declaration, I am, is not a phrase of hope, but a statement of creative power. For when you say, I am burdened, the burden is impressed. When you say, I am anxious, anxiety is given form. When you say, I am free, though every outer fact denies it, freedom is set in motion. First, you will understand how the word becomes flesh. Then, you will see why the feeling behind the word gives it life. And before we end tonight, I will give you a command, a single inner act, which, if accepted in the quiet borderland between waking and sleep, cannot fail to alter the world you wake into. For you will also learn the practice which must be performed before sleep. That state, akin to sleep, where reason loosens its hold and the senses grow dim, is the open door through which all creation passes from the unseen into the seen. It is there, and only there, that the seed may be planted without resistance. And I will show you how to rest in that state without disturbing it, how to enter into the assumption of relief without immediately undoing it through doubt or anxious thought. For most plant the seed, and then in the morning dig it up to see if it has begun to grow. They impress the subconscious with freedom, and then spend the day affirming bondage by their fear. They assume abundance at night and rehearse lack by day. Tonight, you will learn how to rest without sabotage. Now hear me carefully. I do not ask you to deny the fact that a bill exists. I do not ask you to pretend that an obligation is not due. Facts are what they are, but I do ask you to deny them the authority to define your future. For what you call debt is not a power in itself. It is a shadow. It is an echo. It is the outpicturing of a state once accepted, an assumption long entertained, now made visible. And like all shadows, it cannot exist apart from the light that casts it. The debt is not the cause. It is the effect. It is yesterday's assumption made flesh. And what was made by assumption may be unmade by a new one. So tonight, you will not fight the shadow. You will change the light. You will learn to assume the end so quietly, so naturally, that even as the outer world appears unchanged, the inner state will begin its silent rearrangement. First, you will understand the power of the word, then the necessity of the feeling behind it, then the dialogue which sustains the state, then the use of the sacred name, I am. And before we end, I will give you a final phrase, a command, which you must carry with you into sleep. I will not give it now, for it must be received in its proper place, after you have prepared the ground. But if you will remain with me tonight, and hear these words as you drift into rest, you will discover that the burden you thought immovable was never fixed, only assumed. And what is assumed may be changed. Now let us go deeper, because if you are to sleep in peace tonight, you must understand why I place such emphasis on the word. Most men believe speech is only for communication. They think words are used merely to report what has happened, to describe conditions, to tell others how things stand. But I tell you from experience, the word does not merely describe, the word decrees. When I speak carelessly, I am not merely commenting on life, I am shaping it. When I speak consciously, I am not merely expressing a preference, I am issuing a command to the deeper self that must in time become visible as circumstance. This is why the ancient teaching says, in substance, that by your words you are justified, and by your words you are condemned. It does not say by your wishes. It does not say by your efforts alone. It says by your words. Why? Because the word reveals the state from which you are living, and the state is the cause of the world you meet. You may think a phrase is small. You may say, it is nothing, only a habit of speech. But habit is precisely the thing that creates your world. What you say over and over, what you accept as natural to say, what slips from your lips when you are tired, troubled, or alone. These are not idle sounds. They are confessions of state. and every state, persisted in, externalizes itself. So when a man says, I cannot afford it, he believes he is speaking of a price, but often he is doing something far greater than that. He is decreeing limitation. He is teaching himself again and again that he lives in a world where supply is withheld from him. He is fastening his attention upon lack, and then wondering why lack appears to follow him from room to room. When a man says, I am always behind, he believes he is describing a delay. But he is doing more than that. He is marrying the sacred I am to the idea of failure. And then he is surprised when time itself seems to turn against him. He begins to experience life as pursuit, pressure, catching up, never arriving. And all the while, he does not realize that his own repeated confession has become the atmosphere in which he lives. When he says, it never works for me, he has spoken a curse over his own expectancy. He has instructed the deeper mind to anticipate disappointment. Then, when a door closes or a plan delays, he says, you see, I knew it. But what he calls proof was often nothing more than the faithful echo of what he had already decreed. This is why I ask you to become watchful, not fearful, but watchful. I do not mean that you must become tense over every syllable. I do not mean you must live in strain, examining every sentence with anxiety. No, I mean you must awaken to the fact that your speech is creative and therefore sacred. Once you see that, your words will begin to change naturally. For the world, as I have told you, is an echo. It is a mirror. It has no power to initiate. It only reflects. If you stand in a valley and cry out in despair, the valley returns your despair. If you stand in that same valley and sing, it returns your song. The valley does not choose. It only echoes. So too with life. Men become angry with the echo and forget the voice that caused it. They quarrel with the reflection and never think to alter the face before the glass. They say, why does this always happen to me? While continuing to repeat the very inner and outer speech that calls it forth. I have watched this in my own life and in the lives of countless men and women who came to me burdened, frightened, exhausted by conditions. They wanted a new circumstance, but they had not yet changed the voice within. They wanted a new harvest, but they were still planting the same seed. And that is the image I want you to carry with you now, especially as you listen in that softened state before sleep. Every word is a seed. Not some words, every word. Each phrase you accept and repeat enters the soil of consciousness. Some seeds are planted with feeling and go down deeply. Some are cast lightly and lie near the surface. But all are of a kind, and each tends to reproduce after its own nature. If you plant, I am trapped, do not be surprised when your days grow narrow. If you plant, I never have enough, do not be surprised when every bill appears larger than your hope. If you plant, something always goes wrong, do not be surprised when even good beginnings seem to bend toward frustration. You would not stand in a garden sowing thorns, and then pray for roses. Yet this is what many do with speech. They sow fear all day and ask for peace at night. They sow limitation in conversation and ask for freedom in prayer. They sow despair in secret and ask for abundance in public. Then they wonder why the field answers honestly. The garden is not punishing them. It is simply bearing witness. And this should comfort you, not frighten you. For if the garden has been faithful to old seeds, it will be just as faithful to new ones. If an old conversation produced a harvest of debt, pressure, and delay, then a new conversation, sustained in feeling and accepted as true, can produce relief, order, and supply. This is the turning point, and I want you to feel it, not merely hear it. You are not condemned by what has appeared. You are not sentenced by the present balance of things. You are not trapped because the harvest is visible. The harvest only tells you what was planted. It does not tell you what you must plant next. If this world was created by assumption, it can be recreated by assumption. If your present condition is the outpicturing of an old state, then a new state accepted now becomes the cause of a new world. That is why I say to you, do not bow before appearances. Read them. Yes, Attend to what must be attended to in the world of Caesar. Yes, but do not worship them. Do not grant them final authority. A bill is a fact. It is not a god. A debt is a condition. It is not your identity. A delay is an event. It is not your destiny. The moment you understand this, the heart begins to soften. The chest loosens. The mind, which had been clenched around numbers and dates and consequences, begins to breathe again. And in that breathing, creation becomes possible. For no man creates well from panic. Panic repeats. Fear rehearses. Anxiety recycles old words. But a man who sees that the world is echo and not cause can become still enough to speak anew. I remember how many times people came to me and said, Neville, I have tried to change things. And I would ask them, what do you say when no one is near? What do you whisper inwardly when you open a letter? What do you murmur to yourself when you lie down at night? For there, in that quiet, is the true sowing. A man may speak bravely before others and still inwardly plant ruin. A woman may smile through the day and inwardly repeat fear. The world does not answer the performance. It answers the seed. So tonight, and from this night forward, begin with something simple and merciful. Do not begin by wrestling every thought to the ground. Do not begin by condemning yourself for old speech. That too would be another seed of conflict. Begin instead by noticing. Notice what you say about money. Notice what you say about time. Notice what you say about yourself. Notice the quick phrases that escape when something startles you. Notice the old confessions. I cannot afford it. I am behind. It never works. I always struggle. There is never enough. And the moment you notice, do not be ashamed. Be awake. Then quietly plant something new. If the old phrase rises, I cannot afford it, let a gentler, truer seed follow. All that I need is provided, in the right way. If the old phrase says, I am always behind, let the new word answer, I move in divine order. I am not late. I am led. If the old habit says, it never works for me, let the seed be this, everything in my world is being rearranged in my favor. You need not argue with the old seed. You need only stop watering it. Do you see? This is not a battle against words. It is a redirection of planting. And if you persist, the emotional burden begins to change. At first, perhaps nothing outwardly seems different. Yet inwardly, something marvelous begins. You no longer feel like a prisoner of conditions. You feel like the gardener again. You feel that strange and holy relief that comes when a man remembers, I may have planted unconsciously, but I can plant consciously now. That feeling alone is a kind of freedom. It is the beginning of dominion. For once you know that speech is creation, you stop speaking as a victim of life and begin speaking as the author of states. You stop saying what the world has taught you to say. You begin saying what corresponds to the life you choose to live. And as you do, the world, the obedient echo, must begin to answer differently. At first, it may be subtle, a little more ease in the body, a little less fear when the post arrives, a strange calm where panic once lived, a conversation that goes better than expected, a delay that turns to an advantage, a door you had forgotten, opening quietly. Do not despise these beginnings. They are the first shoots in the garden. They prove the soil is alive and responsive. Remember this as you drift towards sleep. Debt is not a final sentence. It is the harvest of a state. And every state may be left. Every state may be replaced. Every state may be transcended by a new assumption, embodied in word, feeling, and inner consent. You are not condemned because you see old fruit. You are being invited to plant a new seed. And once you truly accept that, hope gives way to something deeper than hope. Not mere wishing, not strained optimism, but quiet, creative certainty. You begin to say, perhaps for the first time with sincerity, if this was created, it can be recreated. And that is enough to open the door. For the man who knows he is not condemned can finally listen. The man who knows the world is echo can finally change his voice. The man who knows the harvest came from seed can finally choose what he plants tonight. Stay with me in that spirit, and let these words sink gently below the surface. For next I will show you why the word alone is not enough, and why the feeling behind the word is the very life within the seed. Now listen carefully, and let the mind grow quiet around this, for here we come to the heart of the mystery. A word by itself is only a shape, it is a form. It is like a lamp, not yet connected to the current. You may polish it, repeat it, admire it, even memorize 1,000 beautiful phrases, and still nothing may happen in your world if no living feeling flows through it. But the moment feeling enters the word, the moment the word is warmed by conviction, by relief, by acceptance, by inner assent, then the word is no longer a sound. It becomes creative substance in motion. This is why I have said, and I say it again to you tonight, feeling is the secret. Not because words are useless, but because feeling is the life within them. Feeling is the invisible power that makes the spoken or inner word fertile. Without it, the phrase remains external to you. With it, the phrase becomes yourself. Many people do not understand this, and so they grow discouraged. They repeat noble statements and then conclude the law does not work. They say, I affirmed and nothing changed. But if you listen closely, what they often mean is this: my lips spoke one thing while my body, my breath, and my inner atmosphere confessed another. And the deeper mind, the subconscious, does not respond to the grammar of your sentence. It responds to the vibration of your state. It does not ask, was the phrase elegant? It does not ask, did he pronounce it correctly? It does not ask, how many times did she repeat it? It receives the emotional impression. It receives the mood. It receives what you feel to be true. Heaven, if I may use that word in the mystical sense, is not moved by eloquence. It is moved by conviction. You may whisper a simple sentence with deep acceptance, and it will transform your life. You may shout a perfect affirmation 1,000 times with inward fear, and the fear will be the thing that manifests. This is the conflict most people know and do not yet know that they know. Their lips say, I am prosperous, but their stomach tightens, their chest contracts, their breathing grows shallow, their mind begins to argue. Their body says, no, I am afraid. No, I do not believe this. No, I am bracing for loss. Then they wonder which prayer was heard. I tell you plainly, the deeper feeling was heard. If the lips say prosperity and the body feels dread, the dread is the prayer being offered. If the mouth says peace and the nerves are rehearsing disaster, the nervous vibration is the seed being planted. This is not punishment. It is simply law. And when you understand this, you will stop fighting with phrases as though words were charms. You will stop straining to force yourself to say what your whole being rejects in that moment. You will become wiser, gentler, and far more effective. You will begin where creation always begins, with the state. Do not misunderstand me. I am not telling you to agree with fear. I am not telling you to bow before it and call it truth. I am telling you to stop pretending that a tense mouth can hide a trembling heart. The law is too exact for pretense. It asks for inner honesty, and then for inner transformation. So what do you do when the old fear is present and the noble phrase feels dry in your mouth? You do not force the sentence first. You soften the body first. You seek relief first. You invite the feeling first. Then you speak from there. This is the great kindness of the law. You are not required to leap from terror to triumph in one violent motion. You are invited to move inwardly, gently, deliberately, from strain to ease, from ease to trust, from trust to quiet acceptance, and from acceptance to the word spoken with living power. Suppose you are about to say, I am free, but you feel no freedom at all. The mind is racing, the body is braced, the old account, the old letter, the old fear is loud. If in that state you merely hammer the phrase with effort, you may only deepen the conflict. The word becomes associated with strain, and then you say, it does not work. No. Pause. Be still. Let the phrase, wait a moment. Close the eyes if you can. Let the shoulders drop. Let the jaw unclench, let the breath lengthen, not by force, but by permission. Feel the bed beneath you, the chair beneath you, the floor under your feet. Tell the body, in effect, be still. I am safe in this moment. Then ask yourself, not with pressure, but with tenderness, what would relief feel like, if only for one breath? What would the body feel like, if the burden were already lighter? What would the chest feel like, if I were no longer bracing? Do not demand a grand emotion. Do not insist on ecstasy. Seek only a little softening, a little loosening, a little inward space. That first moment of relief, however small, is precious. It is the opening. And when that opening appears, then let the word rise from it. Then say, quietly, I am provided for, or I am free, or it is handled. And because you are speaking from a softened state, the words carry a different quality. They are not being used as whips, they are being used as vessels. They begin to feel less like a denial of present fact, and more like a declaration of deeper truth. This is how the feeling and the word unite. You need not manufacture a dramatic emotion. You need only become inwardly available to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, even in a small degree, and then speak from that state. A little real feeling is worth more than endless verbal repetition without life. I learned this not only through my own practice, but through the countless men and women who came to me, sincerely hungry for change, and yet weary because they had turned spiritual truth into mental labor. I remember a woman who came to me burdened by financial pressure, and she had done everything she thought she was supposed to do. She had written statements, repeated affirmations, spoken them morning and evening, and yet she told me, with tears restrained but close to the surface, Neville, the words feel dead in my mouth. I say them, and immediately I feel worse. I asked her, what do you feel as you say them? And she answered honestly, I feel afraid I am lying. I feel afraid the rent is due. I feel afraid I am trying to cover fear with beautiful words. That honesty was the beginning of her freedom. I did not tell her to repeat louder. I did not tell her to add more phrases. I told her to stop speaking for a moment. I asked her, can you imagine not the whole world changed at once, but just the feeling of receiving one piece of good news? Can you imagine what your body would feel like if a letter came that gave you breathing room? Can you feel one genuine sigh of relief? At first, she tried to think it, and the thinking made her tight. So I said, no, not with effort. Let it come as though you are remembering a relief you have known before. You know what relief feels like. You have felt it in other matters. Borrow that feeling. She sat quietly, her eyes closed, her breathing, which had been shallow and quick, began to lengthen. The tightness in her hands softened. The muscles in her face, which had been holding themselves up as if in defense, grew still. After some moments, she exhaled deeply, almost as though a weight had fallen from her shoulders. And I said, now from that feeling, speak. Very softly she said, I am cared for. Not I am prosperous in the grand, strained way she had been saying it, but I am cared for. And she felt it. I heard the difference instantly. The words were simple, but they were alive. They were not a slogan. They were an emotional fact she was beginning to inhabit. I told her, remain there. Do not argue, do not reach for larger words yet. Let this one live in you. She went home with no complicated practice. Only this. Each evening, before sleep, she would become quiet. Seek the feeling of relief first, and then speak from that relief, I am cared for. I am provided for. It is already moving in my favor. A short while later, she wrote to me and told me that what she called a chain of unexpected mercies began to unfold. An old payment long delayed was released. A relative who had been silent for years sent assistance without being asked. The matter that she feared would become severe was postponed and then reduced. She said the outer details were many, but what mattered most was this: the fear in my body broke first. Then the world followed. That is exactly the law. The change of feeling is the change of cause. And because the outer world is the shadow, the echo, The outpicturing, it must in time rearrange itself to correspond. Now I want you to notice something very important, especially since this is being heard in the quiet hours, perhaps as your body is preparing for sleep, perhaps as the conscious mind is beginning to loosen its grip. The pace of your inner work matters. Force belongs to fear. Gentleness belongs to faith. If you rush, if you strike at yourself with words, if you try to force conviction before the heart is ready, you remain in the old state of strain. But if you slow down, breathe, allow, feel, and then speak, you enter the creative rhythm. In the beginning, your work may not be to say the most powerful sentence. It may simply be to cultivate the most truthful feeling available that points toward freedom. Perhaps tonight you cannot yet say, with full acceptance, all debts are dissolved. If the phrase feels too distant, do not condemn yourself. Come nearer. Find the bridge. Say, I am safe now. Say, I am open to relief. Say, something is already shifting. Say, I am being supported. Then, as the feeling grows more natural, the larger word will come by itself. And when it comes, it will carry authority, because it will be born of state, not borrowed from memory. This is why I tell you that the subconscious responds to vibration, not grammar. It is not impressed by the size of your statement. It is impressed by the reality of your feeling. A small phrase, spoken in inward agreement, is seed. A grand phrase spoken in inward conflict is noise. So do not be ashamed to begin softly. A whisper in faith is stronger than a shout in fear. A single sentence spoken from relief is more creative than an hour of repetition spoken from tension. And if, as you listen, you begin to notice this in yourself, perhaps how certain words tighten the body and other words soften it, then you are already learning the law in a living way. Let the body become your instrument of honesty. Let it show you whether you are speaking from fear or from fulfillment. If a phrase makes you rigid, pause and go to feeling first. If a phrase brings a quiet opening in the chest, stay there. If a phrase causes the breath to deepen, cherish it. The body often tells the truth before the mind is willing to admit it. There is no failure in discovering this. There is great wisdom in it. For once you know that feeling is the secret, you stop measuring success by how long you have affirmed and begin measuring by how deeply you have accepted. You cease trying to impress the law with effort and begin allowing the law to operate through emotional agreement. And this too is why the hours before sleep are so precious. In that borderland, when you are no longer fully absorbed in the hard edges of the day, feeling becomes easier to guide. The body is naturally slowing. The mind is less argumentative. If you use that time well, not to rehearse fear, but to enter relief, then the word spoken there goes down more deeply. So tonight, if anxiety rises, do not wrestle it. Let it be the signal that you must return to feeling. Become quiet. Breathe. Soften. Find one breath of relief, one moment of inward release. Then speak from that place, even if only a few words. I am safe. I am provided for. It is already changing. I rest in divine order. And let those words drift with you, not as effort, but as atmosphere. For what you feel as you enter sleep is often the mold of tomorrow's experience. And what you speak from that feeling becomes the subtle command the deeper self accepts. Remember this well. Words are the body, feeling is the life. Words are the form, feeling is the fire. Words are the seed case, feeling is the germinating power within it. Unite the two, and creation begins. Separate them, and you may only tire yourself. So I ask you now, as one speaking from long practice and not mere theory, be kind to your own consciousness. Do not force yourself into declarations your body rejects. Lead yourself inwardly, gently, into relief. Then let the true word arise. When it comes from relief, it heals. When it comes from fear, it hardens. When it comes from fulfillment, it creates. And once you have tasted this even once you have felt the difference between empty repetition and a word charged with conviction, you will never go back to mechanical speech again. You will understand why so many pray and yet remain unchanged, and why one quiet sentence spoken from the right state can alter the course of a life. Stay with me and let this sink deeply. Because the next thing I must show you is where this feeling is sustained throughout the day and night. It is not only in what you say aloud, but in the secret conversation you carry within yourself when no one else can hear. There, in that inner dialogue, your feeling and your word meet continuously, and there your world is being shaped every hour. And now we go deeper still. For if the spoken word is powerful, the word spoken within is power in its most constant form. What you say aloud from time to time matters, yes, but what you say inwardly all day long matters even more. The inner conversation is the stream beneath the stream. It runs when the lips are still. It continues when no one is near you. It speaks in the market, in the street, in the bedroom, in the quiet hour before sleep, and in the first moments of waking before the world returns in full. That hidden dialogue is not harmless. It is creative. I want you to hear this plainly, and remember it whenever you are tempted to think that only formal prayer counts. The outer speech is performance. The inner speech is command. A man may speak beautifully before others and still live under the tyranny of fear, because his inward talk is full of defeat. A woman may say all the right things in company and yet continue to recreate sorrow, because in secret she repeats the old story to herself with feeling. The outer speech may be social. The inner speech is legislative. The outer speech may describe. The inner speech decides. For years, most people move through life unaware of this. They think they are reacting to events, when in truth they are quietly rehearsing them before they appear. They call it thinking. They call it worrying. They call it being realistic. But much of what they call realism is simply habitual inner prayer to the old state. Listen to your own inward murmur, and you will discover what you have been worshipping. When you see a letter on the table, before your hand even reaches for it, what rises in you? Is there a silent sentence, quick and almost invisible, such as, "Here we go again"? Is there a tightening thought? It is probably another demand. Is there a familiar, inward sigh? "I cannot bear one more thing"? That tiny sentence, spoken inwardly with feeling, is not small. It is a creative act. When you look at your balance, what is the secret commentary? Perhaps the lips say nothing, but inside a voice says, "I am behind," or "It is never enough," or "I always fall short." You may think these are facts. I tell you they are decrees, and because they are repeated with emotion, they become the architect's lines from which tomorrow is built. And when you think of tomorrow, what do you whisper to yourself inwardly? What if it gets worse? How will I manage? I do not see a way. Many live there, and then wonder why tomorrow arrives clothed in the same mood. It is because tomorrow is first accepted in consciousness before it is encountered in time. The daily murmur is the real prayer life of man. I do not say this to condemn you. I say it to free you. For if the world reflects your inner talking, then you are not condemned by circumstance. You are invited to become conscious of the conversation and revise it. If the inner dialogue built the prison, the inner dialogue can open the door. This is why I urge you, especially in matters of debt, shame, and financial strain, do not merely watch your spoken words for a few moments a day. Watch the inward phrases that arise when no one hears you. Watch the sentence that appears when you open the post. Watch the thought that appears when you count what remains. Watch the secret line that returns when you lie down and think of morning. Not to fear it, not to fight it violently, to notice it. Awareness is the beginning of mastery, for the unseen conversation is the true architect of circumstances. The house called life is built first in silent speech, brick by brick, beam by beam, mood by mood, phrase by phrase. The inner man constructs the outer world. He later calls fate, and because he forgets he laid the foundations within, he stands in the finished room and says, "Who built this around me?" He did, through inner consent. You are always talking yourself into a world. If inwardly you say, I am trapped, you build walls. If inwardly you say, nothing changes for me, you build repetition. If inwardly you say, all is settling, even now, you begin to build openings, pathways, arrangements, relief. The inner conversation is never idle. It is either maintaining the old structure or preparing the new one. Now let me show you something merciful, something I have found to be among the most practical gifts of this law. You are not required to wait for time to heal your inward world. You can revise it. You can rewrite the psychic record. You can alter the emotional meaning of what has already happened. And by changing its meaning in imagination, you change its power in your life. I call this revision. Revision is not pretending that an event never occurred in the world of facts. It is refusing to continue giving it the emotional authority it once held. It is taking the scene as it happened in the senses and rewriting it in imagination until it carries the feeling you prefer. In doing so, you remove the old seed from the soil of consciousness and plant a new one. Many carry debt, not only in ledgers, but in memory. They replay humiliations, a harsh word from a creditor, a moment of embarrassment, a request refused, a face looking at them with impatience. A letter read with trembling hands, and each time the scene is replayed inwardly with shame, the state is re-entered and strengthened. They think they are remembering. In truth, they are recreating. Revision breaks that spell. I remember a man who had come to me, burdened not only by what he owed, but by one particular scene that would not leave him. He had been spoken to coldly, in a public place, regarding a debt. He told me that every night, just as he tried to sleep, the scene returned. The other man's voice, the expression on his face, the sensation of shrinking inwardly. He said, Neville, even when I pray, that scene comes back. I feel the humiliation all over again. I said to him, then you are praying in the language of humiliation, and the law, being faithful, continues to outpicture the state. Tonight you must not merely pray for freedom, you must revise the scene. He did not at first understand. Most people think prayer means only asking or affirming. But I told him, take the scene that wounds you and rewrite it in imagination. Replace the old words with new words. Replace the old emotional signature with relief. Let the event become what it ought to have been. I instructed him to sit quietly before sleep, when the mind was growing gentle. I told him not to revisit the entire story of his life, only that one scene. See the place, hear the voice. Let the scene arise, but do not let it proceed as it did. Stop it, change it. Instead of hearing accusation, he was to hear calmness. Instead of contempt, he was to hear courtesy. Instead of the old line that cut him, he was to hear, it is all settled. There is no cause for distress. The matter has been arranged. I told him to see the other man's face softened, to feel his own body uncoil, to experience the shame turning into relief, as though a hand had been lifted from his chest. Most importantly, I told him to repeat the revised scene until the feeling changed. That is the key. Revision is not complete because you have imagined a different dialogue once. It is complete when the emotional charge has shifted, when the body no longer contracts at the memory, when the old shame no longer rises, when you can think of the scene and feel relief instead of humiliation, then the state has changed. A few days later, he wrote me that something strange had happened, though it was only strange to the reasoning mind. The very matter that had troubled him began to soften in the outer world. A letter came with terms altered. A delay that he feared would bring consequence became an opening, and more than that, he said, Neville, the scene no longer torments me. It feels as though it belongs to another life. Exactly so. He had revised the inner record, and the outer world had begun to answer the revised man. This is the use of imagination in its redemptive form. You need not remain loyal to the emotional version of yesterday. You are not chained to the first draft of your life. If a scene wounded you, revise it. If a conversation shamed you, revise it. If a letter frightened you, revise it. If you stood looking at figures and inwardly declared defeat, revise that moment too. Go back in imagination and hear yourself respond differently. Hear yourself say, calmly, all is settled. Hear yourself breathe. Hear yourself think as the free one thinks. That new inner act is not fantasy. It is a creative correction, and notice what happens when you do this faithfully. Your daily inner murmur begins to change by itself. The old phrases lose force, the old reflexes weaken. The moment you see a letter, perhaps the old thought tries to rise, but now another line appears, gentler and stronger. All is settled. You look at the figures, and instead of the familiar sinking sensation, you remember everything is paid in divine order. You think of tomorrow, and where fear used to narrate your morning, another voice whispers, I am provided for. These are not mere affirmations if they are lived inwardly. They are new scripts. And I urge you, because this is to be heard in the stillness, perhaps while you drift towards sleep, choose a small number of inward phrases and make them your secret companionship. Not many, a few, repeatable, natural, rhythmic. Let them become the background music of the new state. All is settled. Everything is paid in divine order. I am provided for. If one of these opens your chest, keep it. If another feels heavy, leave it for now. Use the one that carries peace. The law responds to your feeling, not to the grandeur of your wording. You may take all is settled and breathe with it. Let it move through you like a quiet tide. When a thought of tomorrow rises, answer gently. All is settled. When memory of an old letter returns, all is settled. When the body tenses, place the phrase there, not as force, but as balm. You may take everything is paid in divine order and let it become the inward interpretation of appearances. Not denying present facts, but denying them final authority. The present statement may say one thing, but your deeper decree is, everything is paid in divine order. You are not lying to yourself. You are choosing the end from which you will live. And I am provided for is one of the tenderest and most powerful inward prayers, because it addresses not only the account, but the state of being. Many are not merely anxious about money. They are anxious about abandonment, exposure, unsupportedness. I am provided for speaks to the whole man. It tells the nerves to soften. It tells the heart it is not alone. It tells consciousness what state to occupy. Let these become living inner statements, not hurried recitations. Hear yourself saying them in the quiet moments. Hear them while walking. Hear them while preparing for the night. Hear them when the first old thought appears and tries to claim your attention. And if the old voice is loud, do not become discouraged. Simply do what the master does. He chooses the script again. This is mastery. Not never hearing the old voice, but no longer obeying it. I want you to understand something else. The inner dialogue is not changed by hatred of the old self. It is changed by steady replacement. If you fight every fearful thought in anger, you remain bound to the same vibration. But if you hear it, bless it for revealing the old state, and then answer from the new one, you begin to educate consciousness. You become the author again. There is great gentleness in true spiritual discipline. A harsh man may silence his lips for an hour, and still rage inwardly. A wise man softens the inward speech, and the outer life follows. Therefore, do not aim merely for positive language. Aim for redeemed inner conversation. The law is not impressed by moral effort. It is impressed by the state you consent to and sustain. At first, you may need moments of deliberate practice. Sit quietly and listen inwardly. Ask yourself, what have I been saying to myself about money? What have I been whispering to myself about tomorrow? What sentence rises when I think of what I owe? Write nothing if you do not wish to. Simply observe. And when you find the line, do not fear it. Replace it, old line, I never catch up. New line, all is settled. Old line, I cannot carry this. New line, I am provided for. Old line, something will go wrong tomorrow. New line, everything is paid in divine order. Repeat the new line, not mechanically, but until the feeling shifts, even slightly. If the body softens, you are succeeding. If the breath deepens, you are succeeding. If the fear pauses for a moment, you are succeeding. That is prayer in spirit and in truth. And remember, the inner speech is continuous, which means your opportunity is continuous. You need not wait for a formal hour. Every moment offers a point of revision. You look at a bill and feel the old drop in the stomach. Revise the inward response at once. You think of a conversation you dread. Revise the scene before it happens. You recall a humiliation from years ago. Revise it tonight and free yourself from carrying it into tomorrow. The world is not only what happens, it is what you inwardly consent to about what happens. Withdraw your consent from the old interpretation, and the old world begins to starve. Nourish the new interpretation with feeling, and the new world begins to grow. This is why I call the inner conversation the true prayer. For prayer is not what you say occasionally to a distant God. Prayer is the habitual movement of consciousness toward a state. If all day your inner murmur bends toward fear, that is prayer to fear. If your inner murmur bends toward relief, settlement, provision, and divine order, that is prayer in the direction of freedom. And because consciousness is God in operation, the prayer is always answered according to its nature. So tonight, as you lie down, and as the mind grows quiet enough to hear the subtle tones beneath thought, listen for the hidden script. Do not be disturbed by what you find. You are not eavesdropping on an enemy. You are discovering the workshop. And once you have found the workshop, you can work there consciously. If a scene from the day remains unresolved, revise it before sleep. If a word wounded you, rewrite it. If you spoke harshly to yourself, forgive it and replace it. If fear narrated tomorrow, answer with your new script. Let the last inward movement before sleep be one of settlement, provision, and peace. Say inwardly, slowly, and with acceptance, all is settled. Feel it. Then, everything is paid in divine order. Feel the order of it, the quiet inevitability. Then, I am provided for. Let the body receive it. Do not strain for results. Plant the script and let sleep carry it inward. For the inner conversation, sustained and felt, becomes the architecture of your world. It drafts the corridors through which events will move. It names the mood that tomorrow will wear. It determines whether you meet the day as debtor or creator, as fearful petitioner or one who knows the law. And now that you see the inner workshop, we must go to the name itself, the root of all inner speech, the sacred center from which every command is issued, the great declaration, I am. The moment we come to this, we come to the center. For all the words you speak, whether aloud or inwardly, rise from one root. All prayer, all fear, all confidence, all despair, all blessing, all limitation, all release. They pass through one gate. That gate is the name, and the name is I am. I ask you now to listen with reverence, not superstition. I do not speak of I am as a mere figure of speech, nor as a pious phrase to be admired from a distance. I speak of it as the creative formula itself. It is the name of God in man. It is the identity of the one who imagines. It is the center from which every state is accepted and every world is projected. When Moses asked for the name, the answer given was not a title among titles. It was not a tribal name, nor the name of a distant power seated somewhere beyond the stars. The answer was, I am that I am. That is not poetry only. It is revelation. It is the great disclosure that the being who says I am is the creative presence. So when I say to you, watch what follows I am not giving you a clever rule of positive thinking. I am showing you the doorway through which you have always been creating. Most men use this name carelessly because they do not know what they are saying. They say, I am tired. I am unlucky. I am trapped. I am behind. I am ruined. And they do not realize that they have taken the name of the Creator upon their lips and joined it to bondage. Then, because consciousness is faithful, the world mirrors the union. What follows I am becomes experience. Not because the phrase itself is magic in some childish sense, but because I am is the acceptance of being. It is identity. And identity sustained becomes form. If I accept myself as one who is always behind, I move through life as that one. I interpret events as that one. I remember as that one. I anticipate as that one. And the world, being myself pushed out, confirms the state. This is why the issue is not merely your circumstances. The issue is what you have been naming yourself. You may believe your problem is debt. I tell you, your first problem is identity. Debt is often the shadow. Identity is the substance from which the shadow is cast. If inwardly you have accepted, I am burdened, I am always catching up, I am the one for whom it does not work, then you have attached the divine name to a state of servitude, and then lived under the law of that attachment. Do not be frightened by this. Let it sober you. Yes, but let it free you. For if the wrong use of I am help build the present experience, then the conscious use of I am can build another. If the chain was forged in consciousness, it can be dissolved there. If the prison was named inwardly, freedom can be named inwardly. The same law that seemed to bind you is the law that now liberates you. This is why I speak of radical responsibility, but never as blame. Responsibility is not condemnation. It is not beating oneself for old uses of the name. It is not looking backward and saying, I have ruined my life. No, that too would be another misuse of I am. Responsibility means this: I recognize the creative center is within me. Therefore, I no longer surrender authorship to circumstances. I do not curse myself for yesterday's ignorance. I awaken from it. There is a great tenderness in true responsibility because it restores dignity. It says, I may have used the law unconsciously, but I can use it consciously now. It says, I need not blame fate, nor fear men, nor worship appearances, because the cause is nearer than breath. It says, the same power I once used in fear, I now use in freedom. And with that comes radical freedom. If all is consciousness, then nothing is fixed in the way the senses claim it is fixed. If your world is the outpicturing of states, then no state is your identity unless you continue to claim it. You may have dwelt in a state for years and still leave it. You may have worn it so long, it feels like your face, and still remove it. You may have called yourself a debtor, a struggler, a trapped one, and yet tonight stand inwardly and say, I am free now, and begin the movement into a new world. Do you see the mercy in this? If reality were ultimately external and separate, you would be at the mercy of conditions. But because the root is consciousness, change is always possible. You are never more than a shift in identity away from a different harvest. Now let us be practical, because I do not want this to remain lofty and unused. Listen carefully to what you have attached to I am in ordinary moments. Not only during prayer, in ordinary moments. For that is where the law is most often operating without supervision. A letter arrives, and inwardly you say, I am behind. Stop there. Do not continue. Do not complete the old ritual. You need not fight the appearance, but you must withdraw the name from the state of bondage. Replace it at once. You may say, slowly and with acceptance, I am being restored in perfect order. Feel the difference. I am behind closes the body, shortens the breath, confirms delay, and places identity under the weight of time. But I am being restored in perfect order does something entirely different. It keeps the creative name joined to movement, healing, alignment, lawfulness, and divine arrangement. It does not deny what the senses report in the moment. It denies their final authority. It places you in a state where correction is natural, or suppose the old cry rises, I am trapped. Many know this feeling. Trapped by numbers, by obligations, by memory, by the fear of tomorrow. If you join the name to that state, you breathe life into the prison. But if, in that same moment, you correct it, not violently, but with certainty, and say, I am free now, you begin to occupy another chamber of consciousness. Do not postpone freedom in your statement. Do not say, I will be free. That places freedom in time and leaves identity in bondage. Say, I am free now. The outer world may not yet show the completed picture, but the creative act begins with present identity, not future hope. The law responds to what you are, not merely to what you wish to become. There are many such corrections, and I urge you to make them living, natural, intimate. If the old thought says, I am overwhelmed, you may answer, I am sustained. If the old thought says, I am in trouble, you may answer, I am under grace and in divine order. If the old thought says, I am the one who always struggles, you may answer, I am the one through whom supply moves freely. But again, do not collect phrases as though they were charms. Choose those that awaken conviction. The power is not in decorative wording. The power is in the union of the name with the accepted state. When I say, I am not describing Neville as a personality. I am invoking being itself. I am speaking from the awareness that precedes all roles. Neville may be rich or poor in appearance, praised or blamed, comfortable or strained, but the I am is deeper than Neville. It is the one reality taking on Neville's present state. Change the state, and Neville's world changes. The I am remains the same. That is why you must never confuse your current condition with your identity. Condition is clothing. I am is the wearer. Condition is a room. I am is the occupant. Condition is a role. I am is the actor. And because I am is the actor, the role can change. This is the great secret that ends despair. A man despairs when he believes his condition is himself. He says, this is what I am, and means by it the passing state. But when he discovers the creative name within, he realizes I am is not the debt, not the fear, not the delay. I am is the power that assumed those states and can assume others. Now I want to speak with great seriousness about a common error, because it keeps many sincere people in circles. They begin to hear these teachings, and they try to use the words while still secretly worshipping the old self. They say, I am free, but inwardly mean, I hope these words rescue me. They say, I am prosperous, but secretly continue to identify as the one abandoned by life. Then they wonder why nothing deep changes. The issue is not whether you can pronounce the words. The issue is whether you will permit yourself to identify differently. To say, I am free now, in the true sense, is to begin withdrawing emotional loyalty from the old story. It is to stop introducing yourself inwardly as the trapped one. It is to cease making a home in the state you have declared you wish to leave. It is a transfer of identity. At first, this may feel solemn, even strange. Good, it should. You are touching the root, you are no longer adjusting branches while leaving the trunk untouched. You are going to the name itself. And because this is the root, even a small correction here can alter many branches at once. A man who repeatedly says, I am being restored in perfect order, and truly begins to accept that state, will notice not only a softening around money, but a softening in his nerves, in his sleep, in his conversation, in how he interprets delay, in how he meets the day. Why? Because identity governs perception, and perception governs reaction, and reaction sustains the world. Likewise, one who says, I am free now, and returns to that identity throughout the day with feeling will begin to act differently, without strain. He will speak differently. He will think of tomorrow differently. He will open a letter differently. The law begins to move through the whole man, because the center has been touched. This is why I tell you, be reverent with the name, but be intimate with it. Do not treat I am as distant theology. Use it in the privacy of your own consciousness. Use it when fear first rises. Use it when memory accuses you. Use it when the old phrase appears and seeks to claim your mouth. Use it not as argument, but as declaration. And if you find yourself slipping into the old use, do not condemn yourself. Correct it. Correction is power. Guilt is another misuse of the name. Some will say, but Neville, Is this not too much responsibility? Are you saying I caused every difficulty? I tell you again, responsibility without blame, freedom without excuse. The purpose of this teaching is not to burden you with metaphysical guilt. It is to deliver you from helplessness. If I leave you believing your world is shaped elsewhere, I leave you in fear. If I show you the creative center within, I return the scepter to your own hand. You need not explain every event of your past tonight. You need only use the name consciously now. That is enough to begin. The law does not demand that you become perfect in a day. It asks for sincerity in the present moment. If, when fear rises, you remember and gently say, I am being restored in perfect order, with genuine willingness, you have already shifted. If, when the old state shouts, you answer, I am free now, and feel even a little space open within you, you have already begun the new creation. And the more often you return to the name in this way, the more natural the new identity becomes. Soon you will notice that the old phrases sound foreign. The old self-description begins to feel like an old coat. You may still see remnants of the former world, yes, but they no longer define you. You have ceased giving them your name. This is the profound thing. The world may show delay, but you no longer say, I am delay. The world may show an old shadow, but you no longer say, I am trapped in shadow. You remain with the creative formula and join it to the chosen state. I am being restored in perfect order. I am free now. Say them slowly when needed. Feel their weight, feel their authority. Let the body hear them. Let the inner man stand up within them, and understand that this is not self-hypnosis in the cheap sense. It is awakening. For all men are hypnotized by appearances until they discover the name. To identify with what the senses report is the common trance. To return to I am, and consciously choose what follows it is to awaken from that trance and create deliberately. I have found in my own life, and in the lives of those who have practiced this sincerely, that the greatest transformation begins not when they force conditions, but when they cease misnaming themselves. When they stop saying, I am broken, and begin to know, I am being restored. When they stop saying, I am trapped, and begin to feel, I am free now. When they stop using the sacred name as witness for the old state, and begin using it as the seal of the new, then a quiet authority enters them. Not arrogance, not strain. Authority. They no longer beg life to change. They stand in the knowledge of the name and begin to decree from identity. They become inwardly solemn and outwardly calm. They stop arguing with every appearance because they know where cause resides. They stop speaking as though circumstances have the final word because they have touched the source word. This is why this teaching is intimate and solemn at once. Intimate, because the name is spoken in the secret place of your own consciousness. Solemn, because every time you say I am, you touch the creative center. So from this moment, let the name be holy in use, not merely in language. Let it be holy because you will no longer join it to despair without noticing. Let it be holy because you will correct the old unions as they arise. Let it be holy because you will speak from it as one learning to create consciously. If the old voice says, I am behind, answer, I am being restored in perfect order. If the old voice says, I am trapped, answer, I am free now. If the old voice says, I am lost, answer, I am guided and provided for. Say it not as one trying to persuade a distant power, but as one reclaiming the use of the name. Say it as the one who has remembered where authority lives. For the name is the formula. The formula is creative, and the one who uses it consciously begins to discover that identity, not circumstance, is the true cause of life. Hold this with reverence tonight. Let it settle in you before sleep. We have not yet come to the practice of the drowsy state, nor to the final command I shall later give you. Here we are laying the pillar, the great pillar, that the divine name in you is I am, and what you join to it becomes your world. Once this is understood, truly understood, you cease fearing the old labels and begin replacing them at the root. And when the root is changed, the tree must, in time, bear different fruit. And now, having laid that pillar, I would have you come with me to the threshold, where this truth may be impressed most deeply, most gently, and most effectively upon the deeper self. There is a moment every night that men pass through in ignorance, though it is one of the holiest moments in the whole cycle of human experience. It is the quiet borderland between waking and sleep, not full waking, where the mind argues and measures, and not yet sleep, where the senses are stilled and the world is forgotten, but that tender interval where one drifts, where the body grows heavy, where thought loosens, where effort becomes difficult, and where feeling, if accepted, sinks like seed into prepared soil. I have spoken of it often, and I speak of it again, because it is of immense importance. It is the state akin to sleep. I do not mean by this some strange performance, nor a difficult exercise, nor anything modern men would make needlessly complicated. I mean something simple, intimate, and available to all. It is that drowsy state you know already, the softening, the yielding, the inward falling, the moment when the day begins to recede and the night receives you. In that state, the conscious mind, which during the day is so eager to compare, deny, object, and defend, becomes quiet. It does not disappear entirely, but it loosens its grip. The gatekeeper grows sleepy, and as it softens, the deeper self becomes receptive. The impression then made is received more readily, and what is received in feeling is later expressed as experience. This is why I tell you, with all seriousness and tenderness, never go to sleep in a state you do not wish to perpetuate. For most men and women, bedtime is not sacred. It is merely the end of fatigue. They lie down with the body, but they do not lay down the day. They continue inwardly. They rehearse the unpaid bill. They reread the conversation. They revisit the insult. They count the figures again. They imagine tomorrow's pressure. They feel the same compression in the chest, the same dread in the stomach, the same quiet sentence, "What will become of me?" And then, having impressed all this upon the deeper self at the edge of sleep, they wonder why morning returns carrying the same atmosphere. Do you see the pattern? They do not merely remember their fears before sleep. They plant them. They do not merely think of debt. They enter sleep in the state of debt. They do not simply review the day. They hand the deeper self a blueprint and say, "By feeling, build more of this." The law is impersonal. It does not scold you, and it does not flatter you. It receives the state and reproduces it. If you sleep in worry, you perpetuate worry. If you sleep in resentment, you perpetuate resentment. If you sleep in the feeling of bondage, you continue the experience of bondage. But if you sleep in relief, in trust, in the mood of fulfillment, in the quiet knowing that all is set in motion in divine order, then you awaken under a different influence, and the world, being yourself pushed out, begins to echo the change. Now I want to lead you gently here, for this part of our work tonight begins to turn from instruction into inward preparation. Up to this point, I have spoken more as teacher. Here I begin to speak also as one guiding you into the chamber where the seed is planted. So let us proceed softly. Do not strain to understand every word now. Let the meaning settle. Let the voice carry you. You need not do anything all at once. You need not force a result tonight. You need only begin rightly. As the night comes upon you, or as you listen in darkness, let the body be comfortable. I mean truly comfortable. Do not make a ritual of discomfort and call it discipline. The body need not be punished to receive a new state. Let it be at ease enough that attention may turn inward without irritation. If you are lying down, let yourself lie as one who is ready to rest, not as one preparing for battle. If you are seated, let the seat support you. If there is tightness in the clothing, loosen it. If the pillow is ill-placed, adjust it. Do these little things without fuss. They are not trivial. A body asking continually for correction keeps calling the mind outward. Then, once you are settled, let your hands rest where they fall naturally. Do not hold yourself together with unnecessary effort. Let the jaw soften, let the tongue rest, let the brow smooth if it can. If it cannot at once, do not struggle with it. A strained attempt to relax is still strain. Simply notice and allow. Now begin to let the breathing slow of itself. Not forced, not counted with anxiety. Simply slower, gentler, as though the day no longer requires you, as though the hour has released its demands. You are not performing an exercise to impress anyone. You are allowing the organism to recognize that the work of the day is over. Take one slow breath and feel the chest rise and fall. Then another, and let it be a little quieter. If the mind begins to hurry ahead, do not follow it. Return to the breath, not as a technique to conquer thought, but as a simple way of entering the body and leaving the noise of the day at the door. Let the shoulders drop. Many men carry their whole day there. They lie in bed and still hold the office, the creditor, the argument, the fear, all upon the shoulders, as though night itself could be carried like a sack. Let them fall now. Let the shoulders sink into the mattress or into the chair, as though something heavier than your own effort supports you. Feel the neck ease. Feel the back settle. Let the muscles of the belly unclench, if only a little. I have found that many speak of faith, while their bodies remain in a posture of defense. Yet the body often reveals the state more honestly than the lips. So let the body begin to receive the truth you are preparing to impress, that for this hour you are safe enough to release. If thoughts of the day arise, and they will, do not wrestle with them as enemies. Let the day close like a book whose reading is finished for now. You need not solve the page again tonight. You need not rig the scene. You need not count the figures one more time in darkness, as though repetition were wisdom. The day has had your attention. Give the night your consciousness. I say this lovingly, because many have made a habit of entering sleep as petitioners of fear. They come to the threshold with trembling, then hand trembling to the deeper self. They say inwardly, I hope tomorrow is kinder, while feeling certain that it will not be. Then they sink into sleep, under the seal of dread. Tonight, do otherwise. Let this night be used consciously. Remember the golden rule I gave you. Do not sleep in a state you do not wish to perpetuate. If you wish peace, enter sleep in peace. If you wish freedom, enter sleep in the feeling of freedom. If you wish restored order, enter sleep in the sense that all is being restored in perfect order. The deeper self receives what you are, not merely what you mention. And so this preparation matters. We are not yet planting the imaginal scene itself. We are preparing the soil. We are turning from the noise of the world to the receptive silence where the word may be felt as true. As you continue listening, allow the room to recede a little. Let sounds, if there are sounds, be as distant things. You need not resist them. A creak in the house, a passing carriage in the street, the ordinary murmur of life, let them be far off. Do not make war with sound. Indifference is enough. We are turning inward, not demanding outer perfection. If the mind brings up the old questions, how will this happen? What of that account? What of that demand? What if nothing changes? Answer none of them now. This is not the hour for accounting. This is the hour for impression. The conscious mind loves to ask how, when it grows afraid of surrender. Let it grow quiet. The deeper wisdom does not need your anxious calculations. There is a peculiar mercy in this borderland, before sleep. The mind that argued all day grows tired. The senses that insisted all day begin to dim. The body that held tension begins to ask for release. If you cooperate with this mercy, rather than filling the threshold with worry, you will discover that the night becomes not an escape, but a workshop of creation. I tell you plainly, many pray badly by day because they remain divided, but they could pray powerfully at night if they knew how to enter this state. For in this drowsy interval, if you can accept one simple feeling as true, and let sleep take you in that acceptance, you have done more than hours of strained effort could accomplish. So let us continue to soften. Feel the weight of the body now. Feel how naturally gravity receives you. You do not hold yourself up in sleep. The earth carries you. Let that be symbolic. You need not hold your world together tonight by strain. Let the deeper power carry what the outer mind cannot manage by force. Another slow breath. Let the exhale lengthen just a little. With it, let the day loosen. The conversations may end now. The accounts may wait. The planning may rest. Even your concern may rest. There is no virtue in carrying the same fear into the dark and calling it responsibility. True responsibility tonight is to choose the state in which you fall asleep. If you have been accustomed to sleeping in concern, do not condemn yourself. Habit is simply repeated acceptance. We are changing the acceptance, that is all. Nothing dramatic need occur this instant. A slight change in feeling, honestly received at the edge of sleep, can in time alter the whole pattern of your days. Perhaps you notice, as you begin to relax, that the body still remembers the old state. The chest may hold a faint pressure. The stomach may flutter. The jaw may tighten when a certain thought passes through. This is not failure. It is merely the body echoing yesterday's assumptions. Meet it kindly. The body, too, must be taught that a new state is safe to enter. So when tension appears, do not say, "It is not working." Say inwardly, gently, "The day is ending. I release it. All is being restored in perfect order." Let the phrase be slow enough that the body can hear it. Let it descend, not just pass over the surface of the mind. Again, we are not forcing belief by argument. We are preparing receptivity by atmosphere. That is the great change here. We are moving away from the daytime posture of trying to convince, trying to solve, trying to fix, and into the nighttime posture of consenting, receiving, allowing, and impressing. This is why the tone changes, the rhythm changes, even the speech changes. The hour asks for depth, not speed. And if you have listened this far with the intention of sleeping while hearing these words, then this next part is especially for you. You need not remain sharply attentive, as in study. Let attention float. Let phrases pass through you and leave their perfume. If a sentence reaches you, receive it. If another drifts by while you soften into drowsiness, let it drift. The deeper self is listening more faithfully than the surface mind imagines. As the day closes, make no inward appointments with fear. Do not say, "I shall think about this in bed." Do not reserve the pillow for anxiety. Do not make the darkness your counting room. Let the bed become, instead, the place where you lay down the old state and enter the new one in feeling. This is the beginning of mastery for many, not what they do in public, but what they accept in private at the edge of sleep. So tonight, before sleep fully takes you, let there be a conscious interval, however brief, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10. It matters not in the way men imagine. What matters is the quality of the state. In that interval, you cease reviewing the old and begin preparing to inhabit the new. Feel the body now as quieter. Feel the breath as less urgent. Feel the shoulders heavier, softer. Let the eyes, if closed, remain closed without pressure. Let the tongue rest in silence. Let the heartbeat be what it is without fear. Let the room fade. Let the day fade. Let your name, your roles, your errands, your burdens all stand a little farther away. You are approaching the door, not a door made with hands. A door in consciousness. The threshold where waking reason relaxes, and the deeper self becomes impressionable. This is the door before sleep. Men pass through it nightly. The wise pass through it knowingly. And when one begins to pass through it knowingly, the entire night is redeemed. In a little while we shall go further, and I shall guide you in what to do when the state has softened enough. How to feel the wish fulfilled, how to enter the inner act, how to let sleep take you in possession rather than in longing. But for now, let the preparation itself be the work. Let the nervous system learn another way of entering night. You are not here to force sleep. You are not here to fight thought. You are not here to prove faith by tension. You are here to let the conscious mind soften, to let the deeper self become receptive, and to choose not to carry into sleep any state you do not wish to see again. That alone, practiced sincerely, begins to change a life. So remain with me in this gentler pace. The world may still be what it appears to be tonight, but you are no longer required to fall asleep under its verdict. The figures may still sit where they sit, but you are no longer required to worship them in fear before sleep. The old letters may exist, the old memories may exist, the old feelings may knock, but you are no longer obliged to hand them your final moments of the day. Tonight, let the final moments belong to the new state. Let the body know it may rest. Let the breath know it may slow. Let the shoulders know they may release. Let the heart know it need not rehearse the old burden one more time. Let the mind know that the day is complete. And let the deeper self, now opening in quiet receptivity, be prepared to receive something altogether different. And now, in that softened state, when the body is quieting and the day has begun to loosen its hold, I will give you the practical heart of tonight's work. This is where many speak beautifully of the law, yet fail to use it simply. They make the imaginal act too large, too elaborate, too crowded with details, and then they wonder why they cannot enter it naturally. So listen carefully, and do this gently. You are not to build an entire drama. You are to choose one short scene, one simple event, one small moment that would be true if your burden were already lifted. That is all. Do not choose 10 scenes. Do not choose a long story. Do not attempt to imagine every creditor, every figure, every paper, every arrangement. The creative act is not improved by complication. In truth, complication often reveals doubt. The mind that does not trust the seed keeps adding more seed. But one seed planted deeply is enough. Choose one scene that implies completion. It may be the feel of a letter in your own hands, and upon it the clear impression paid in full. It may be the clasp of a hand, and the voice of a man saying to you, calmly and kindly, it is all taken care of. It may be the moment after all has been settled, when you awaken in the morning and notice that the old weight in your chest is gone, and you lie there in quiet relief as one who owes no struggle to the day. Any one of these will do, if it is natural to you, and if, while imagining it, you can feel the relief of completion. Do you hear me? The relief is more important than the ornament. Many fail here because they think the power lies in visual perfection. They labor to see every line of the letter, every fold in the coat, every corner of the room, and in all this strain, they lose the one thing that creates feeling. If you can only dimly sense the letter, but you feel the breath of relief as you hold it, you have done better than the one who sees every detail and feels nothing. If you barely hear the words, it is all taken care of, but your whole being softens in response. You have touched the law. So choose now, inwardly, one short scene. Let it be something you can return to night after night without effort. It should be brief enough that you can repeat it softly. A few seconds only. Not a long conversation. Not a complicated transaction. A small end result moment. The law responds to the state implied, not to the length of the scene. If I were doing it with you now, and the burden in my life had taken the form of debt, I might choose the feel of an envelope already opened in my hand. I would not stand outside myself looking on. I would be in my own body, seeing through my own eyes. This is essential, always from the first person, always from the position of being. I do not imagine myself as another might see me. I imagine as I myself would experience it. I look down, and there in my hand is the paper. I need not read every word. I need not even read all of it. I may only see the one phrase, or the one stamp, or the one notation that implies finality. Paid in full, settled, cleared, finished. It is not the exact wording that matters so much as the fact that to me, in the scene, it means the burden is gone. Or I may choose the handshake. I feel the hand in mine, solid, warm, brief. I hear the other man's voice. Not many words, only enough. It is all taken care of. Or perhaps everything is settled. I do not make him speak a sermon. I hear one sentence. I feel my own response. The small exhale, the loosening in the shoulders, the almost disbelieving relief that is no longer disbelief, because I am in the scene and it is already so. Or again, and for many, this is the gentlest. I choose no paper and no other person at all. I choose the morning after fulfillment. I feel myself waiting. I do not leap up to check anything. I simply become aware, in bed, that the old pressure is absent. The chest is light. The mind is not rushing. The body is not braced. There is no inward counting, no dread of the post, no hidden flinch toward the day. I lie there and feel what it is to awaken without weight. This too is a perfect scene. If it implies for you that all debts are dissolved in divine order, whatever scene you choose, keep it short, keep it simple, and above all, keep it in the feeling of relief. Now let me give you the manner of entering it. You do not attack the scene. You do not seize it. You do not command it into vividness by force. You enter as one enters a memory, softly, quietly, receptively, in the drowsy state when the body is heavy and the outer world recedes. Bring up the chosen scene as though it is happening now, not later, not tomorrow, not one day, now. If it is the letter, feel the paper between your fingers, not in an abstract way. Let the touch be simple and immediate. Perhaps it is slightly stiff. Perhaps the edge presses lightly against your thumb. Perhaps you feel the smoothness of the page as you steady it. You need not manufacture perfection. A suggestion of touch is enough if it carries the conviction of contact. The subconscious accepts feeling more readily than precision. If it is the handshake, feel the pressure of the other hand, the brief grip, the release. Hear the voice near you. It is all taken care of. Hear it once, or hear it again. If the scene repeats itself naturally, but let it be the same small moment, not a wandering conversation. The power is in the loop, not in expansion. A short scene repeated in feeling becomes dense with reality. If it is the awakening without weight, then feel the sheets, the pillow, the quiet room, and most of all, feel your own breath. Notice in imagination how the breath moves when one is free. It does not catch, it does not hurry, it rises and falls with ease. Let that breath be your proof in the scene. Many have lived so long in tension that relief feels unfamiliar. So use the body. The body knows relief when it is felt. Listen to this well. Emphasize relief, not explanation. Emphasize completion, not process. Emphasize peace, not mechanics. The surface mind loves details because details give it something to do. But the creative act is fulfilled by feeling. If while imagining the scene you find yourself asking, but how exactly was it paid? Who arranged it? What account moved? What sequence took place? Then you have left the end and returned to the means. Gently bring yourself back. You are not there to witness the bridge of incidents. You are there to occupy the fulfilled state. I cannot tell you too strongly how important this is. The imaginal act is not a strategy session. It is an acceptance session. You are not trying to instruct the law in its method. You are allowing the law to receive your chosen end. Repeat the scene with softness. By repetition, I do not mean strain. I mean a quiet returning like a lullaby. The scene plays, it fades a little. You bring it back. The hand clasps. The voice says the line. The paper rests in your fingers. The relief moves through your body, again and again. Not rapidly, not anxiously, tenderly. As a mother rocks a child to sleep, let the scene rock you into the state. If at first it feels faint, continue without discouragement. Reality grows by acceptance. If at first the image is dim, but the feeling begins to deepen, continue. If the image is clear, but the feeling is thin, pause and return to the feeling of relief before continuing. Remember what we established earlier. Do not force the phrase first and hope the body catches up. Let relief come, even in a small degree, and then speak or hear the scene from there. You may even assist yourself by a simple inner exhale. In the imaginal scene, after hearing it is all taken care of, let yourself breathe out. That breath, if felt, is often more creative than 100 words. It is the body's confession that the burden is lifted. The subconscious understands such confessions. And if you are one who finds sound more natural than sight, then make sound your doorway. Hear the words clearly. It is all taken care of. Hear them as spoken to you by one whose statement settles the matter. Or hear yourself saying softly, with quiet wonder and gratitude, "It is finished. All is settled." Let the tone carry certainty. The subconscious hears tone, rhythm, and feeling long before it concerns itself with wording. If you are one who is moved more by touch, then remain with the feel of the paper, the handshake, the bed, the relaxed chest. If you are moved by bodily atmosphere, remain with the sensation of waking free. Do not think you must imitate another's gift exactly. The law is one, but the doorway into feeling varies. Some hear, some see, some feel directly. Use what is natural and make it faithful. Now another point, and it is a precious one. Do not keep changing your scene. Many begin with one scene, then the next night doubt it and choose another, then another, and another still. This wandering delays the deepening of the state. If a scene feels natural and implies clearly that all is settled, remain with it. Repetition of the same short scene impresses the deeper self with power. It becomes familiar. It becomes easier to enter. It begins to carry its own atmosphere. The moment you return to it, the body remembers the relief. This is an immense aid. So choose one and stay with it, at least until it has done its work in you. As the scene repeats, you may notice moments where it feels almost real and then slips away. Do not be troubled by this. That is often the very sign that you are nearing the threshold. The conscious mind cannot hold with equal firmness while growing drowsy. Let it soften. You are not trying to remain sharply awake. You are trying to carry the feeling into sleep. This is the sealing of the scene, and it must be done without violence. When the scene has become warm with feeling, when the relief is present, when your body has accepted, even for a moment, that the burden is gone, let the scene begin to fade naturally. If sleep is coming, do not clutch at it. Do not say, "Wait, I must make it clearer." Do not sit up inwardly and begin checking whether you did it correctly. That checking is the old anxiety returning in spiritual clothing. Let it fade. Let the letter blur and drift. Let the handshake dissolve. Let the voice become an echo of assurance. Let the feeling remain. If sleep overtakes you in that feeling, the work is well done. I would rather you enter sleep with a half-seen scene and a real sense of relief than with a perfect mental picture and a nervous heart. The law responds to what you have become, not to what you have artistically arranged. And if on some nights sleep comes quickly before you complete many repetitions, do not think the night wasted. One genuine entrance into the state, however brief, is of value. If on other nights you repeat the scene longer, let it be because it is pleasant and natural, not because you are trying to force a result by duration. Again and again I tell you, it is not strain that creates. It is feeling accepted. When morning comes, do not rush to dig up the seed. Do not immediately ask, "Did it work?" Do not measure the outer world before you have even left the inner chamber. Rise as quietly as you can. Inwardly, carry a trace of the feeling with you. If the old thoughts appear, do not enthrone them. Bless them and return, if only for a breath, to the mood of all is settled. The scene belongs to the night, but the state may accompany the day. And if during the day you are tempted to change the imaginal act because appearances continue, remember this: appearances are often the delayed echo of yesterday's state. You are now planting from a new state. Give it continuity. Give it loyalty. Give it the courtesy of time. I have seen men and women transform conditions that had seemed fixed, not by complexity, but by this very simplicity. One short imaginal act, felt nightly in the state akin to sleep, accepted as true and surrendered to sleep without interference. They did not force the bridge. They did not dictate the means. They simply occupied the end and let life arrange itself. So tonight, if you take only this from me, take this clearly. Choose one scene, brief and final. Enter it in the first person, repeat it gently. Feel the relief more than the details. Let the senses assist you. The touch of paper, the sound of a voice, the breath of release, the softness of waking without weight. And when the feeling ripens, let the scene fade as sleep comes. Do not force. Do not analyze. Do not check. Plant and sleep. For that is the rhythm. Accept, impress, rest, and yet even after the scene is planted, many undo it the next morning. And yet even after the scene is planted, many undo it the next morning. They do beautiful work in the night. They enter the feeling. They impress the subconscious with relief. They fall asleep in a state they truly desire to perpetuate. And then, at the first sign of the old world, they rise and begin speaking as the former self. In this way, they plant by night and dig up by day, and then wonder why the harvest delays. This is one of the most important things I can tell you, and I tell it to you now as plainly and as gently as I can. After the imaginal act, your chief task is not to keep repeating the command in fear. Your chief task is to avoid denying it. You do not need to repeat the command all day long. You need not strain to hold it every hour, but you must not contradict it by returning to the language of panic, complaint, and helplessness. Many think spiritual discipline means constant speaking. No, often it means restraint. It means refusing to lend your tongue to the old state after you have given your heart to the new one. It means remembering that every word is still creative, even after the night's work is done. The law does not suspend itself because morning has come. The same creative power that received your imaginal act while you drifted towards sleep is still receiving your inner and outer speech as you move through the day. So let us speak of sabotage plainly, because once you see it clearly, you will stop doing it unconsciously. To contradict the decree is to speak from the very state you have renounced. It is to say inwardly or aloud, nothing is changing after having entered the feeling that all is settled. It is to repeat the problem to yourself and to others, as though repetition were wisdom. It is to keep narrating the old burden after you have already declared freedom. It is to let the tongue become the servant of appearances instead of the servant of consciousness. A man will say at night, "It is finished," and in the morning, upon seeing another letter, he says, "Here we go again." It never ends. He has not merely described a feeling. He has issued a fresh command. A woman will fall asleep in peace, having imagined all in divine order, and by noon she has told 3 people, "I am overwhelmed. I do not know how I shall manage." She believes she is only being honest, but she is doing something far more potent than honesty. She is re-identifying with the old state and giving it fresh life through speech. Do not misunderstand me. I am not telling you to become theatrical, nor to deny the existence of facts in a foolish way. I am not asking you to pretend there are no papers, no figures, no duties. I am asking you to deny them final authority. There is a vast difference. One may acknowledge an appearance and still refuse to enthrone it. One may see a letter and yet remain inwardly anchored in the decree. One may act responsibly in the world and still speak from a higher state than the condition suggests. This is the practical art. When the old world appears, do not say it is all falling apart. Say within yourself, or if needed, aloud in a quiet tone, all is well. Not because the senses agree, but because your decree has already gone forth. If asked about your affairs and you do not wish to discuss them, you need not invent dramatic statements. A calm, everything is moving in order, is enough. Such language does not feed panic. It does not strengthen the old state. It keeps the door closed to contradiction. And if you can say nothing in alignment, then say little. Silence is often the highest wisdom in the interval between seed and harvest. I want you to understand this deeply. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not avoidance. Silence, when it comes from faith, is retained power. It is creative energy, not scattered. It is the refusal to spend your word on appearances that are already dying. There is a silence born of fear, and there is a silence born of confidence. I speak of the latter, the silence that says, without saying, "I have already spoken. I need not argue with shadows." Many people speak simply because they are uncomfortable with uncertainty. They feel pressure in the day and immediately seek release through narration. They tell the old story again and again, as though repetition will lighten it. but every repetition is another impression. Every retelling can become another act of sowing. To guard the tongue, then, is not to become cold or severe. It is to become conscious. It is to ask before speaking, do I want this statement to continue in my world? That question alone will transform your speech. Try this gently. The next time the old mood rises and you feel the impulse to complain, pause before the words leave your lips. Do not fight the feeling. Do not condemn yourself for having it. Simply pause. Take one easy breath. Feel your feet where you stand, or feel your hand resting where it is. Then ask inwardly, what would I say if I truly believed the decree is already working? Perhaps the answer will be a simple phrase. All is well. It is in order. I am provided for. This too is part of the unfolding. Say that, instead, softly, without strain. In that small moment you have guarded the tongue and remained loyal to the state. You see, spiritual discipline is often built in these little crossings, not in grand moments, but in ordinary ones. At the table, at the post, in conversation, while walking, while paying a bill, while waiting. These are the places where the old self tries to reclaim your speech. If you remain awake there, the night's work deepens wonderfully. Let me make it even more practical for you, because I want this to be lived, not merely admired. When you wake, before the mind begins its old counting, give yourself one aligned phrase. It need not be long. All is settled in divine order. Or, I move through this day in peace. Or simply, I am free. Say it once or twice with calm feeling, then rise. Do not turn it into anxious repetition. Let it be the tuning of the instrument before the day begins. If during the day a letter arrives, do not let your first word be a surrender to fear. You may open it. You may read it. You may respond as required in the world of Caesar. But inwardly, keep the higher order. This does not define me. Everything is moving in order. I have already spoken. You are not being passive. You are refusing inner disorder while dealing with outer form. If someone speaks to you in a tone of alarm and asks, what will you do? Do not borrow their panic in order to seem sincere. A peaceful answer carries more power than an agitated one. You may say, I am attending to it and all is well, or it is being resolved. Such answers are not evasions when spoken from conviction. They are acts of alignment. You are choosing the state from which you act. If you catch yourself speaking the old language, do not dramatize the mistake. This too is important. Some people, upon noticing they have contradicted themselves, fall into self-condemnation. They say, now I have ruined it. And in saying so, they plant yet another negative impression. No, be kinder and wiser than that. If an old phrase escapes you, simply stop and revise it. If you say, I am overwhelmed, correct it gently. No, I am being restored in perfect order. I am supported. If you say, nothing is changing, pause and say, the change is already in motion, even if unseen. This correction, done without fear, is itself a powerful act. Remember, the law is not a tyrant waiting to punish your imperfections. It is a principle responding to your dominant state. A momentary slip need not matter if you return to the chosen assumption. The danger lies not in one stray word, but in living all day in contradiction, while imagining by night in faith. Choose consistency, not perfectionism. There is another form of contradiction that is subtler, and for many more common. It is not loud complaint, but inward rehearsal. The lips remain quiet, while the mind repeats the problem. This too is speech. Silent speech is often more creative than audible speech, because it carries less performance and more belief. A man may say to others, all is well, but inwardly mutter for hours, what if it gets worse? What if I cannot manage? What if I am trapped? That silent murmur is the true prayer. So guard not only the outer tongue, but the inner one as well. You have already learned how to work with the inner conversation. Now use that knowledge in the day. If the mind begins to rehearse fear, Do not wrestle with it harshly. Give it a new line. All is settled. Everything is paid in divine order. I am provided for. Let these become your inner returning places, not chanted in tension, but returned to as one returns to a room of peace. I often think of it this way. After the imaginal act, your decree is like a lamp lit in the inner house. To guard the tongue is simply to stop blowing upon it with the winds of fear. You do not need to keep relighting it every hour if it burns steadily. You need only cease extinguishing it. And there is strength in this kind of restraint that the world seldom understands. The world believes power is in immediate reaction, in constant explanation, in nervous speech. But I have found the opposite to be true. There is great power in the man or woman who can remain inwardly composed while appearances clamor. There is authority in the one who answers pressure with poise. Such poise is not inherited, it is practiced. And this very interval after the night's imaginal work is where that poise is born. If you would cultivate this discipline more deliberately, give yourself a simple daily intention, especially in the beginning. Say to yourself in the morning, today I will not speak against my freedom. Not, I will control every thought with violence, but I will not lend my speech to fear. Then move through the day as an observer of your own language. Notice how often the old phrases rise to the lips. Notice how quickly the old story seeks witnesses. Do not be shocked by this. Be instructed by it. Every noticed impulse is an opportunity to choose anew. And if you find that silence is easier than a lined speech in certain moments, use silence. A quiet pause, a nod, a brief reply, a deferred conversation, these can be holy things when used to protect the seed. The tongue that does not speak fear is already serving the decree. There are times when saying less is the most faithful thing you can do. But let your silence be warm, not hard. We are not cultivating severity. We are cultivating harmony. The aim is not to become rigid and joyless, but to become inwardly unified. To speak one language at night and another by day is division. To pray in relief and then narrate panic is division. To imagine completion and then emotionally rehearse catastrophe is division. The law answers the state, and division weakens the state. Unity strengthens it. The more your speech, inner and outer, agrees with your imaginal act, the more swiftly the outer world echoes the change. I have seen this change lives in ways men call miraculous. A person makes no outward display. They do not become theatrical in speech. They simply stop repeating the old story. They stop saying, I never have enough. They stop saying, I am always behind. They stop saying, nothing works for me. They begin speaking with quiet neutrality, where once they spoke in panic, and with quiet faith where once they spoke in despair. And because the tongue is no longer renewing the old state, the imaginal seed has room to mature. So if you ask me, what shall I do after I have planted the seed? I tell you, live responsibly. Yes. Act wisely. Yes. But above all, do not contradict your own decree. You do not need to shout your command to the world. You do not need to repeat it every hour as though the law were deaf. The law is not deaf. It is exact. What is needed is continuity of state, and continuity is often preserved less by constant speaking than by disciplined non-contradiction. Say what is aligned. Say what is peaceful. Say what is necessary. And where neither is possible, be still. Let the stillness be faith held in reserve. Let it be confidence without display. Let it be the quiet knowing, I have already done the inner work, and I will not undo it with careless speech. Then when night comes again, you will find it easier to enter the imaginal act, because the day has not scattered what the night had gathered. The body will trust the state more quickly. The mind will resist less. The feeling of relief will return with greater ease, and little by little, what first seemed a discipline will become a natural way of being. You will notice that you speak less from reaction and more from center. You will feel a new strength in your words, because you have stopped spending them wastefully. This is pastoral wisdom, if you like, but it is also law. Guarding the tongue is not mere morality. It is creative precision. It is the protection of the seed. It is the refusal to side with the shadow after you have chosen the substance. And when this discipline begins to take root in you, something else appears, something deeper than careful speech, a quietness of being, a holy rest. Not only the silence of the mouth, but the silence of struggle. And when that silence comes, you will begin to understand the Sabbath in a new way, not as inactivity, but as the inward rest of one who has spoken, believed, and ceased from contradiction. And this is where so many miss the sweetness of the law, because they imagine that once the act is done, they must continue straining, continue pushing, continue proving to themselves that they truly believe. But I tell you, the proof of faith is not strain, it is rest. The proof of faith is not compulsion, it is quietness. The proof of faith is not how many times you repeat the word, but whether you can lie down in peace after speaking it, and let the unseen do its appointed work. When I speak of the Sabbath, I am not speaking merely of a day on the calendar. I am speaking of an inner condition, a holy stillness that follows the creative act. It is the inward pause after the decree, the deep exhale after the seed has been planted, the calm acceptance that says, without argument and without display, it is finished. This is the Sabbath of the soul. This is the rest of the one who has truly prayed. This is the silence in which faith becomes atmosphere. After you have imagined the scene and felt it real, after you have entered the relief of freedom and impressed that state upon the deeper mind, there comes a moment when nothing more is required. Nothing more. And if you can accept that moment and yield to it, you will find a peace that many spend a lifetime seeking through effort. But if you do not accept it, if you return immediately to mental labor, to checking, to forcing, to anxious repetition, then you keep yourself from the very rest that seals the act. You see, there is a difference between faith and compulsion, and it is a difference every serious student must learn in the body, not merely in the intellect. Faith is calm, compulsion is restless. Faith speaks and releases, compulsion speaks and then clutches. Faith plants the seed and trusts the field. Compulsion digs up the soil each morning to inspect the roots. Faith says, I have done the inner work. Compulsion says, perhaps I must do it again and again and again, because I do not yet trust what I have done. Now do not condemn yourself if you have lived in compulsion. Most have. I myself had to learn this through exhaustion. There were seasons in my own life when I performed a lovely imaginal act, and then spent the day disturbing it inwardly with anxiety. I would feel the reality of the wish fulfilled in the night, and by morning I was measuring appearances, taking the pulse of circumstances, wondering if the law had heard me, wondering if I had done it correctly, wondering whether I had felt enough. In that wondering there was no Sabbath. In that state there was no rest. And because there was no rest, I was confessing that I did not yet believe the act complete. Then I learned to recognize that inner agitation for what it was. It was not diligence. It was disbelief wearing the garments of diligence. It was fear pretending to be responsibility. It was the old man still unwilling to die, asking me to serve him with mental motion. Once I saw this clearly, I began to practice another way. After the imaginal act, I would let the body become heavy, the breath become soft, the heart become quiet, and I would say inwardly, with no effort at all, it is finished. Not as a dramatic phrase, not as performance, but as a simple fact of consciousness. And then I would rest in that fact. I want you to feel the tenderness of this, especially because many who listen tonight are tired, truly tired. Not only tired in the body, but tired in the nerves, tired in the mind, tired of carrying financial fear like a stone in the chest. If that is you, then hear me gently now. You were not meant to manifest through strain. You were not meant to create by tormenting yourself. The law is subtle, intimate, merciful. It asks for your assumption, your feeling, your consent to the fulfilled state, and then it asks for your rest. Rest is not a reward after manifestation. Rest is part of manifestation. The farmer knows this better than many mystics. He prepares the field, he plants the seed, he covers it, he waters as needed. And then he does not lie in the field all night, clawing at the earth in panic. He does not kneel each dawn and say, "Let me see whether it has obeyed." He knows the nature of seed and soil. He knows that growth is silent. He knows that the deepest work is hidden. The field looks still, and yet beneath that stillness there is movement, division, swelling, emergence, life preparing its own appearance. The eye cannot see it. The hand cannot force it, but the wise man trusts it. So it is with the seed you plant in consciousness. Your imaginal act is the seed. The subconscious is the field. Feeling is the moisture. Faith is the warmth. And the Sabbath is the farmer's rest. If, after planting, you spend the next day searching for signs with anxiety, you are like the farmer standing in the furrow demanding fruit before its season. If, after planting, you speak from panic and contradiction, you are like the farmer trampling the bed he has sown. If, after planting, you keep replanting in fear because you cannot endure silence, you are like the farmer scattering seed without rhythm, never allowing any one seed to take root deeply. But if, after planting, you rest, then the law moves in its own beautiful order. There is a rhythm to creation that the anxious mind does not understand. The anxious mind wants immediate evidence because it worships appearances. It believes what it sees, and it calls that realism. But the awakened imagination lives from another order. It knows that the unseen is cause and the seen is effect. It knows that the seed is more important than the harvest at the moment of planting because the harvest is already contained in it. It knows that silence does not mean absence, it means gestation. So after you have decreed, let yourself sink inwardly into the feeling that all has been arranged in a wisdom deeper than your conscious planning. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the jaw soften. Let the breath descend lower in the body. Let the day stop arguing with you. Let the figures be what they are for now, and no more than that. Let the letters remain paper. Let the old fears pass across the mind like clouds passing across a field at dusk. You need not wrestle each cloud from the sky. You need only remain where you are, in the state you chose, until the weather changes. This is the Sabbath. And I tell you honestly, the Sabbath is one of the surest signs that the act was accepted. Not because a voice from heaven announces it, not because bells ring, but because a certain inward compulsion ceases. The need to force begins to fade. The hunger to check begins to loosen. A quiet confidence, sometimes so gentle you may almost miss it, settles in the chest. You begin to feel, "I need do nothing more tonight." That feeling is precious. Do not override it. Do not mistake it for passivity. It is the very seal of faith. Many people think faith should feel intense all the time. They imagine that if they truly believed, they would remain in a kind of feverish certainty. No, often true faith feels like relief. It feels like being able to put something down. It feels like no longer rehearsing the emergency. It feels like the body finally receiving permission to stop bracing. The old state keeps the nervous system on guard. The new state, once accepted, begins to quiet the whole organism. And because the one listening tonight may be listening as sleep approaches, I want to guide you into that quiet now. Let the mind hear this in the simplest way. If you have done the imaginal act, you are not required to keep proving it. If you have felt the relief, you are not required to produce it by force every minute. If you have spoken the decree, you are not required to wrestle the world into agreement before dawn. You are invited to rest in the interval, to rest in the invisible, to rest because creation, once impressed, is already underway. There is a phrase I have used often, and I use it here, not as an ornament, but as medicine for the anxious mind. It is finished. Say it inwardly after the act, and let it mean exactly what it says. Not, "It will be finished if tomorrow goes well." Not, "It may be finished if I repeat this enough times." But, "It is finished." The creative act is complete in consciousness. The seed has entered the field, the command has gone forth, the law has accepted the impression. It is finished. If you say this and immediately feel the old impulse to check, Do not be troubled. Simply say it again, slowly, like one settling into bed after a long journey. It is finished. Then let the words fade and keep only the feeling of completion. The phrase is a bridge into rest. Once you cross, you need not keep walking back and forth across it all night. This inner Sabbath also changes the way you meet signs, or the absence of signs. Before the Sabbath, the mind hunts evidence. It scans every event and asks, is this it? Is this proof? Is this movement? It reads too much into everything, or despairs over nothing. It lives in tension. But once the Sabbath is entered, signs lose their tyranny. If they come, you bless them. If they do not come yet, you remain composed. Why? Because your faith is no longer suspended on appearances. The state itself has become your dwelling place. I have known men and women who delayed their own peace for months because they believed they had to see a visible shift before allowing themselves to relax. They said, in effect, I shall rest when the account changes. I shall rest when the letter arrives. I shall rest when the debt is cancelled. But this reverses the law. You do not rest because the world has changed. The world changes because you have entered rest. The Sabbath is not the effect. It is part of the cause. Your rest is not the final chapter after manifestation. It is the inner climate in which manifestation ripens. Imagine again the field. If the farmer, having planted, cannot stop pacing, cannot stop digging, cannot stop trampling the rows, he disturbs the very conditions in which growth occurs. But if he leaves the field in peace, the hidden life proceeds without his interference. In the same way, your constant anxious checking disturbs your own consciousness. It does not disturb the law, for the law remains perfect, but it keeps you identified with the state of waiting and fear. The Sabbath releases you from that identification. It says, I am no longer the one chasing proof, I am the one who has planted and trusts. This is why I tell you that rest is the proof of faith. Not because a tired body lies down. Many lie down and still labor inwardly, but because the heart ceases its argument. The inner courtroom grows quiet. The prosecuting voice of fear loses momentum. The witness stand of appearances is emptied of final authority. And in that hush, you begin to feel something greater than relief. You begin to feel companionship with the law itself, as though life were no longer against you, as though the very structure of things were, in silence, carrying your decree to completion. If you listen while sleep is near, receive this now as a permission. You are allowed to stop struggling tonight. You are allowed to leave the matter in the field of God, which is your own deeper consciousness. You are allowed to breathe without solving everything before sleep. You are allowed to release the day's accounting. You are allowed to trust the unseen movement more than the visible delay. None of this is negligence. It is faith in practice. Let the body know this too. If your chest has been tight, let it soften. If the brow has been held in effort, let it smooth. If the jaw has been clenched around tomorrow, let it unclench. Let the tongue rest in the mouth. Let the eyes, even now, feel as though they are no longer searching. Let the shoulders drop from the ears. Let the belly receive the breath. Let the breath lengthen without force. The law does not need your tension. The law answers your assumption. And if thoughts come, old thoughts, familiar thoughts, practical thoughts, fearful thoughts, do not take each one as a command. Let them pass. You have already chosen the state. You have already planted the seed. You have already spoken the decree. Return when needed to one inward closure. It is finished. Then rest again. The phrase is not for battle now. It is for settling. It is the blanket laid over the seedbed. It is the closing of the gate after the planting. There is such dignity in this inner Sabbath. The world may not see it, but heaven does. Because heaven is this very depth of consciousness in which you stand. The one who can rest after the act has understood something sacred. He has understood that creation is not accomplished by agitation. She has understood that the subconscious is not persuaded by panic. They have understood that the deepest movements are the quietest. And with that understanding comes a kind of noble simplicity in living. One stops overworking the unseen. One stops treating faith as compulsion. One begins to move with the law rather than against oneself. If tomorrow brings an appearance that once would have alarmed you, meet it from this Sabbath. Let the response arise from rest, not from reflex. Perhaps you will say inwardly, this is only the field before the sprout appears. Perhaps the seed is still growing. Perhaps it is finished, and this too belongs to the bridge. Or perhaps you will say nothing at all, and simply remain inwardly still. Any of these, if they preserve the state, are signs of faith. The Sabbath is not one phrase only. It is a condition of non-contradiction, quiet confidence, and surrendered certainty. I want to linger here, because for those listening to sleep, this may be the very medicine your system has longed for. Many have trained themselves to lie down in vigilance. They carry the day into the night, the letters into the bed, the balances into the breath, the fears into the dream. They do not enter sleep. They collapse into it while still inwardly resisting life. And because they sleep in resistance, they rise with resistance. But tonight, you can enter another pattern. You can let sleep become Sabbath. You can let the night become the resting place of the completed act. You can let the final feeling before sleep be not dread, but finishedness. To do this, you need not produce ecstasy. Simplicity is enough. The feeling of all is settled is enough. The feeling of I have done my part inwardly is enough. The feeling of quiet release is enough. The mind will try to persuade you that more is needed, because the mind is accustomed to labor. But the deeper law often completes its finest work, while the surface mind is finally still. Think of twilight on a field after planting. The farmer has gone in, the tools are put away, the air cools, the birds quiet, the ground appears unchanged to the eye. Yet, beneath the darkening soil, life is already at work. No trumpet sounds, no visible proof appears. Still, the process has begun. That is the image I would leave with you for this Sabbath of consciousness. Let the tools be put away. Let the inner field be covered in peace. Let the night do what the day cannot. And if you find yourself tempted, even now, to ask, but what if I wake and fear returns? Then hear me tenderly. If it returns, you do not fail. You return to the state again and rest again. This is not violence against yourself. This is education in faith. Each time you come back to Sabbath, you weaken compulsion and strengthen trust. Each time you choose rest over checking, you train the body and mind to dwell in the fulfilled state more naturally. In time, what feels like practice becomes your nature. So after the command, rest. After the imaginal act, rest. After the feeling of relief, rest. After saying inwardly, it is finished. Let the whole being receive that sentence as truth. Let there be nothing more to add. Let the silence that follows be your prayer. Let the calm that follows be your evidence. Let the softness that follows be your faith, made tangible in the body. This is the Sabbath interior. This is the holy repose after creation. This is how the nervous system learns the language of trust. This is how the heart stops serving appearances and begins serving the unseen reality. This is how a man or woman, once driven by compulsion, becomes a quiet master of the law. And from this rest, a new way of living begins to emerge, not merely a moment of peace at night, but a posture carried into the day, a way of moving through the world as one who has already entered freedom inwardly, and therefore no longer belongs to the old rhythm of fear. And now, having entered that inner Sabbath, having felt the matter settled within yourself, you must understand the next movement of the law, and it is this: you must live as the one who is already free, even while the outer world still appears to be arranging itself. I do not mean that you must pretend before men, nor put on a false smile, nor act recklessly as though facts do not exist. I mean something far deeper and far quieter. I mean that inwardly, in your posture of consciousness, in the way you walk, in the way you breathe, in the way you touch the simple events of the day, you must cease to live as the condemned and begin to live as the redeemed. For the world does not respond to your words alone, nor even to your nightly imaginal act alone. It responds to the state you occupy from moment to moment. If, after planting the seed at night, you rise in the morning and put on again the garment of fear, then you return to the old state and call it your home. But if you rise and quietly wear the feeling of relief, of order, of being provided for, then you are living from the end, and all things must bend to that assumption. To live from the end is not to wait for freedom. It is to begin from freedom. It is to stop saying inwardly, when this is paid, I will feel peace, and to reverse it completely. Because I am peace now, all things move toward their proper settlement. This is the great reversal. The world teaches man to make his inner life depend upon outer proof. I teach the opposite. Make the outer follow the inner. Let your peace come first. Let your gratitude come first. Let your dignity come first. Then the visible arrangement, which men call circumstance, must take the shape of what you have already accepted within yourself. If you understand this, then tomorrow morning need not be a return to the old prison. It can be the first day you move through the same rooms, the same papers, the same letters, the same obligations, but as a different being entirely. I have seen men and women miss their own harvest because they imagined rightly for a few moments, yet continued to live all day in the mood of deficiency. They spoke the command at night and worried over breakfast. They felt relief in bed and panic at the post. They imagined paid in full in the sacred stillness before sleep. And then by noon, they had told 3 people, I do not know what I shall do. And so they asked the law to serve 2 masters. But the law serves the dominant state, the one you return to, the one you inhabit most naturally. Therefore I tell you, after your imaginal act, do not return to life as a debtor in consciousness. Return to life as one through whom order is now flowing. Your account may not yet reflect it. The letter may not yet show it. The arrangement may not yet be visible. But you, if you are wise, will begin to reflect it first. What does this look like in the common movements of the day? It looks like opening the morning with a slower breath, instead of an immediate tightening in the chest. It looks like receiving the day as one receives a message already answered. It looks like touching the mail, not as though it were a serpent, but as though it were paper carrying temporary appearances, and nothing more. It looks like no longer granting final authority to ink, numbers, stamps, and dates. I am not asking you to neglect your affairs. I am asking you to handle them from a new state. There is a profound difference. The old man handles a bill and feels diminished. The new man handles the same bill and feels composed. The old man feels judged by it. The new man sees it as part of a movement already under divine arrangement. The old man thinks, this is taking from me. The new man knows, this is circulation, and I am the source of the state from which all circulation is interpreted. When I say pay with gratitude, I do not speak in a sentimental way. I speak of a real inner act. If you must send money, send it without the feeling of being robbed by life. Do not bless the lack and curse the payment. Bless the movement. Bless the circulation. Bless the fact that there is flow at all. The state of abundance is not merely the possession of sums. It is the feeling of unbroken supply. The one who lives in scarcity feels that every outflow is a wound. The one who lives in abundance feels that flow is natural and return is inevitable. Therefore, when you pay anything, large or small, do not inwardly say, now I have less. Say, if only silently and gently, all moves in order. I am sustained. I am not losing. I am circulating. You will discover that this shifts your whole body. Your hand softens. Your breath deepens. Your nervous system no longer treats every transaction as danger. And the world, which is only yourself pushed out, begins to mirror that relaxation with new channels of supply. This is why I tell you that freedom must be lived before it is seen. If you wait to feel free until all signs agree with you, you will always remain bound to signs. But if you begin to feel free while signs still contradict you, then you have stepped into creative power. You have ceased to be a servant of appearances and become their author. And do not think this means some grand display. It is often most visible in the smallest things. The tone of your voice changes. You answer differently when asked how things are. You stop repeating the old story. You no longer rehearse your trouble for sympathy. You do not need to convince anyone that you are burdened. You begin, instead, to carry yourself with a calm that is not pride and not denial, but quiet certainty. Men may call it composure. I call it alignment. If someone asks, "How are things?" the old state rushes forward and says, "Terrible. I am overwhelmed. I do not know how this will end." But the one who is living from the end does not use the tongue to strengthen the prison he has already left in consciousness. He may answer simply, "All is well," or "Things are moving into place," or "I am at peace, and all is being arranged." Such words, spoken naturally, not theatrically, keep you aligned with your decree. They protect the imaginal seed. They allow the feeling of the wish fulfilled to continue its work beneath the surface. This is not deception. It is spiritual fidelity. You are being faithful to the end you have accepted. Now let me speak plainly, for this is where many become confused. To live as the free does not mean foolishness. It does not mean spending in panic and calling it faith. It does not mean neglecting letters, obligations, or conversations that require attention. It does not mean carelessness with the affairs of Caesar. The law I teach is not disorder, it is divine order. Living from the end means that whatever you do from the consciousness of being supported, not from the consciousness of being cornered. You may still write the letter, you may still make the payment, you may still speak to the creditor, but you do it without inward surrender to fear. You do it as one who knows, this is not the end of me. This is part of the bridge. I have already spoken. I have already imagined. I have already entered the state. Therefore, this movement too serves my freedom. I recall a woman who came to me with a face so worn by financial anxiety that before she spoke, I could already feel the story she had been living. She told me she had taken my instructions seriously. She had imagined at night. She had felt the relief, yet by day, the fear returned the moment she opened her purse or looked at her accounts. I asked her not what she imagined at night, but how she moved through the day. That is often the hidden key. She said to me, "Neville, whenever I must pay anything, I feel as though life is draining me. I feel small. I feel foolish. I feel punished." And I said to her, "Then you are still paying as the old self. Your imaginal act is planting a seed, but your daily feeling is watering another field." She looked at me with great sincerity and asked, "Then, how shall I pay?" I told her, "Pay as a woman who is supported by infinite supply, not lavishly, not carelessly, peacefully. Bless every outflow as circulation. Refuse the feeling of depletion." I asked her to practice a very simple thing for 1 month. Each time she paid a bill, bought food, or spent even a small sum, she was to pause inwardly for one breath and say, "Divine order flows through all my affairs. I am provided for, not rapidly, not mechanically, but with feeling." I also told her to stop speaking of money as though it were an enemy. No more, "It all disappears." No more, "There is never enough." No more, "I am always behind." Instead, I gave her gentler language, truer language for the state she wished to occupy. All is moving. Supply is active. I am cared for. She returned some weeks later, and I noticed at once that her face had changed before she told me a single event. There was softness where strain had been. Her shoulders no longer carried the same invisible burden. She said, "Neville, the first thing that changed was not my figures. It was my sleep. I stopped going to bed in dread. Then my days changed. Then, one by one, things began to move. An overdue payment was unexpectedly delayed in my favor. A relative repaid a sum I had long given up. Then my employer increased my wages, and I told her, 'Yes, you began to live as the supplied, and life had to echo your new state.' Mark this well. Often the first evidence that you are living from the end is not money. It is peace. And that peace is not small. It is the very substance from which the outer change will emerge. If tomorrow you open a letter without terror where once you would have trembled, that is already a mighty sign. If tomorrow you speak to another without shame, where once you would have concealed yourself, that is already movement. If tomorrow you lie down at night, and your chest is no longer tight with dread, that is no mere comfort. That is the state changing. And because the state is the cause, the effects must follow. Never belittle these inner shifts. Men ignore them because they cannot be counted, yet they are the true turning points of life. I want you to feel what tomorrow can be. If you take this seriously, imagine rising and not reaching, first for the old feeling. Imagine opening your eyes and remembering before anything else, I have already spoken the word. Imagine the body, which has grown accustomed to alarm, beginning to learn a new rhythm. You sit up, and there is no rush of panic. You breathe, and the breath goes lower into the body. You move through your room, and instead of the invisible monologue of pressure, there is a new undercurrent. All is in order. I am provided for. I walk in peace. The post arrives. You take it in your hand. Perhaps there are envelopes that once would have pierced you with fear at the mere sight of them. But now, you stand in a different center. You do not surrender yourself before opening them. You remain yourself. You remain the one who has entered the end. You read what must be read. Respond if response is needed. And all the while, you refuse to become the state you have left behind. That is mastery in daily life. To live from the end is also to let your body participate in the new assumption. Men speak of imagination as though it were only thought. It is not. The body reflects the state too. The anxious man walks with haste, glances with suspicion, speaks with abruptness, sleeps lightly, eats under tension. The free man may still have tasks, obligations, and even pressing arrangements, yet his body carries another message. He is not hunted inwardly. He is not crouched within himself. He moves with a certain spaciousness. I do not mean slowness for its own sake, but ease. Therefore, if you would live as the free, observe your body during the day. Are your shoulders raised without need? Let them fall. Is your breath tight in the throat? Let it descend. Is your jaw clenched while thinking of accounts? Soften it. These are not merely physical adjustments. They are entrances into the state. The body can be taught to agree with the imaginal act. And when you must speak of your affairs, do so from dignity. Shame has imprisoned many more than numbers ever have. A man in debt often suffers twice. Once from the condition, and again from the humiliation he attaches to it. He imagines himself judged, diminished, less than others. But if he understands the law, he sees that the condition is a state, and a state is not identity. He may have occupied the state of debt, but he is not debt. He may have worn that garment, but he is not the garment. Therefore, when he speaks, let him speak as one who has remembered himself. No groveling within, no secret self-condemnation, no narration of defeat. Let him deal honestly. Yes, but from inner nobility. The world responds strangely and beautifully to this. Doors open where fear would have closed them. Conversations soften where panic would have hardened them. Help appears where self-rejection would have hidden it. Not because others are gods over you, but because they are part of the mirror, responding to your changed state. There is another thing I would have you understand, and it is very tender and very powerful. The man who lives from the end learns to receive small mercies with quiet gratitude, not desperation. When a little relief comes, he does not clutch it in fear. He blesses it. When an unexpected kindness appears, he does not think, this is all I will get. I must hold it tightly. He thinks, yes, this too is part of the flow. In this way, he ceases to stop the river with his own anxiety. He lets life move. And because he lets it moves more abundantly. Many block their own supply because they interpret every gift through fear of loss. But the free state interprets through continuity. It says what comes, comes through law, and what law gives, law sustains in right order. If tonight this teaching reaches you while you are weary, if you have been carrying the humiliation of numbers, the dread of letters, the secret fear of tomorrow, then let this portion settle deeply in you. You need not wait for tomorrow to begin living differently. You can begin now before sleep, by deciding who you shall be when morning comes. Not what shall happen first, but who shall waken that body and open those eyes. Shall it be the old self who scans the day for threats, or the awakened self who says, I have entered the state. I walk from the end. I do not borrow my mood from appearances. Decide this before sleep, and the morning itself will feel altered. And if tomorrow the old fear tries to rise again, and perhaps it will, for old habits do not always depart at once. Do not condemn yourself. Simply return. Return quietly. Return at once. Do not make a drama of it. Do not say, I have failed. Say instead, I remember. One breath, one inward sentence, one gentle correction. I am free now. All is moving in divine order. I am provided for. Then continue your day. This is how the new state becomes natural, not by violence against yourself, but by repeated loyalty to the end you have chosen. In time, what now feels like practice will feel like your very nature. As you live in this way, something marvelous happens. The future loses some of its power to frighten you. The morning post loses its old sting. The conversation you once dreaded becomes manageable. Sleep comes more easily, because you are no longer spending the whole day sowing fear into the night. And then, from that calmer ground, the bridges of incident appear with greater clarity. Ideas arise. Meetings occur. Delays turn in your favor. Unexpected channels open. Old matters settle. The same world that once looked like a wall begins to reveal itself as a passage. This is not because the world suddenly became kind. It is because you ceased to meet it as a prisoner and began to meet it as the operant power. So tomorrow, if you would prove this law, do not look first for a miracle in numbers. Look first for a miracle in your state. Open a letter without terror. Speak without shame. Pay without inward collapse. Walk without the burdened posture of doom. Receive the day as one already carried by divine order. That shift alone, if held, will alter more than endless worry ever could. For to live as the free before the evidence is not delusion. It is creation in its mature form. It is faith embodied. It is the invisible becoming flesh in your tone, your breath, your gaze, and your ordinary acts, long before the world catches up and calls it a miracle. Now let me tell you something that will preserve many from abandoning the work, just as it begins to move. After you have spoken the word, after you have felt it real, after you have entered rest and begun to live from the end, there may come a season in which the outer world seems slow to agree. At times it may even appear to argue with you more loudly than before. Another letter comes. Another demand appears. Another figure presents itself before the senses, and the untrained mind immediately says, you see, nothing has changed. But I tell you, do not be deceived by the noise of appearances. What you call resistance is most often only the fading momentum of the old state. It is not the death of your new assumption, it is the echo of the former one. When a great ship changes course, it does not spin in an instant upon the water. The helm may be turned decisively, the new direction already chosen, and yet for a little while the vessel continues in the line of its former movement. The old momentum still spends itself upon the sea. If a man judged too soon, he would say, the turn has failed, but the captain knows better. He does not panic, because the prow has not yet fully aligned with the new heading. He remains steady, because he knows the law of movement. So it is with consciousness. The moment you change the state, the creative act is done. But the world of shadows, of sequence, of visible effects, may still show the bend of the old course for a time. Be not frightened by that interval. It is not failure. It is transition. Think also of an echo in a valley. A word is spoken once, yet the sound returns again and again along the hillsides. If one did not understand the nature of echo, he would imagine many voices speaking back at him. But there was only one voice, and what he hears afterward is but the dying repetition of what was already uttered. In the same way, Much of what troubles you after you have assumed a new state is not fresh authority. It is an echo. It is yesterday's feeling sounding through today's circumstances. Why then should you surrender to it as though it were final? Let the echo fade. It cannot speak forever unless you speak again from the old state and give it new life. This is why I urge persistence, but not the kind of persistence men usually imagine. I do not mean strain. I do not mean gritting the teeth and wrestling with the world all day long. I mean gentle fidelity. I mean remaining inwardly loyal to what you have accepted, even while appearances pass before you like clouds. There is a softness in true persistence. It does not shout at shadows. It does not tremble before them either. It simply remembers, it breathes, it returns to the chosen state, again and again if needed, but without violence, without self-condemnation, without fear. I have watched many turn back at the very threshold because they interpreted delay as denial. A week passes and nothing visible changes, and they begin to dig up the seed. A letter arrives that looks worse than the last, and they say, I knew it. I was only deceiving myself. But if they had remained still a little longer, if they had understood the law of shadows, they would have seen the old structure loosening. There are times when the old condition seems to gather itself for one last display. It presents itself with force, with urgency, with drama, as though demanding that you acknowledge it again as master. And this is the moment of testing, not punishment. Testing. Will you return to the former man? Or will you remain the one who has already entered the end? I say to you plainly, the old world often shouts loudest just before it dies. Remember that, let it become a lamp in the hour of trial. When a new assumption has truly taken root, the old state is not pleased to depart quietly. It may send one more frightening letter. It may arrange one more conversation meant to stir the old panic. It may place before you one more figure that seems to mock your decree. But these are the last tremors of an old foundation. Do not crown them with your fear. Do not feed them with your speech. Do not bow before them inwardly. Stand in the state you have chosen, and let the shadow exhaust itself. Suppose tomorrow, or some day soon, another bill comes, another notice, another demand. What then? I will tell you exactly what to do, and I ask you to do it simply. First, breathe. Before thought runs into old channels, breathe. Let the breath descend. Let the body soften. Refuse the immediate reaction of the former self. You are not that self now unless you re-enter him. Then, look at what is before you without inward collapse. Read what must be read, but do not let the outer fact dictate your inner identity. Quietly say within, this is a shadow. This too is part of the bridge. I remain in the state of freedom. If a phrase helps you, use one gently. All is being resolved in divine order. I am provided for. I have already spoken. Then continue with what must be done. But from that state, notice what I am not telling you to do. I am not telling you to deny that paper exists, nor to pretend numbers are invisible, nor to act foolishly. I am telling you not to react from the old man. There is all the difference in the world between dealing with a circumstance and becoming it. The old self became every demand inwardly. He put it on like a garment and called it his identity. The new self deals, but does not become. He responds if response is needed, but he remains centered. He remains the operant power. He remembers that the final authority is not in the envelope, but in consciousness. If fear rises in the body, do not be ashamed. I want you to hear me clearly, for this will save you from much unnecessary struggle. The rising of old feeling does not mean the law has failed. It means an old habit has been touched. Let it rise and pass. Do not make a religion of fighting sensations. If the chest tightens, breathe. If the stomach drops, place your attention on the feeling of relief you cultivated at night. Even a little of it will do. A single sincere moment of returning to the end is stronger than a long hour of rehearsing the problem. Persistence is not measured by how intensely you resist fear, but by how faithfully you return to your chosen state. There is a kind of spiritual vanity that troubles many students. They imagine that if they truly believed, they would never feel a tremor, never have a doubtful thought, never face a contradictory appearance. That is not wisdom. The issue is not whether a shadow passes before you. The issue is whether you give it your throne. A king may hear many voices in his court, yet he remains king. So too with you. Let thoughts come and go. Let appearances present themselves. Let old sensations attempt their return, but remain seated in your assumption. That is persistence. That is mastery in its practical form. I recall a man who had applied these teachings with sincerity. He had imagined his financial burden lifted. He had felt the relief. He had slept better than he had in months. Then, as though the world wished to insult him, his largest demand arrived with greater urgency than before. He came to me in distress and said, "Neville, I must have done something wrong. It seems worse." I told him, "No, you have not failed. You have stirred the depths. The old state is moving. Do not judge the process by its noise." I instructed him to do exactly what I am telling you now. Breathe, refuse the old reaction, speak peace inwardly, and remain faithful to the end. He did so. He stopped rehearsing disaster. He answered only what was necessary and would not inwardly surrender. Within a short time, the matter shifted in a way he could not have arranged by anxiety. Terms were changed. A delay became mercy. What he had called worsening was in truth the rearrangement. Had he panicked, he would have re-entered the old state and prolonged the very thing he feared. This is why I say that persistence must be soft. Hard persistence is usually fear, wearing the costume of discipline. It strains, checks, forces, and watches the world with suspicion. Soft persistence trusts. It remembers. It returns. It keeps the inner lamp lit without exhausting itself. It is like keeping a fire through the night, not by throwing on great logs in panic, but by steady tending. One breath, one remembrance, one return to I am free, one quiet refusal to narrate defeat. This is enough, more than enough, if done with sincerity. When delays appear, do not ask, "Why is it taking so long?" Ask instead, "Can I remain faithful here?" For the delay is often the very place in which your state becomes natural. If everything changed at once, many would receive relief without transformation. But the seeming interval trains the soul in loyalty to the unseen. It teaches you to value the state more than the sign. And once you learn that, you are never again a servant to outer events. Then, even before the debt is visibly dissolved, something greater has happened. The debtor consciousness has died. And when that consciousness dies, its world cannot long survive it. So if another shadow appears, bless it as passing. If another delay comes, bless it as part of the bridge. If the old fear whispers, bless it too, and let it go unfed. You need not wrestle the shadow to the ground. Stand in the light, and it fades by itself. The world is slower than imagination, but it is just as obedient. Give it time to reflect what you have become. The mirror is not refusing you, it is catching up. And if you remain faithful here, not dramatically, not with strain, but with this quiet, tender persistence, something beautiful begins to happen. The very place where you once would have broken becomes the place where strength is born. The old fear loses its voice. The delays lose their sting. A strange calm starts to rise in you. And then, very softly at first, joy begins to rise. And when joy begins to rise, do not push it away by saying it is too soon. Do not mistrust it, simply because the outer picture has not yet fully changed. That rising joy is not foolishness. It is not denial. It is the soul recognizing before the senses can confirm. It is the inward fragrance of a thing already accomplished in consciousness. I have said many times, and I say it again now, in tenderness. Joy is the fragrance of faith. It is what faith smells like, in the garden of the heart, before the flower is visible to the eye. When that joy comes, even softly, welcome it. Let it move through you like warm light. Let it assure you that the seed is alive. In the beginning, the signs may be very small, so small that the old mind, if allowed to rule, would call them coincidence and pass them by. A letter arrives with a gentler tone than expected. A conversation that once would have become an argument turns peaceful. A delayed matter pauses instead of pressing harder. Someone speaks a phrase that resembles the very word you have been speaking within yourself. A little refund appears. A burden lifts for an afternoon where once it stayed all day. These things are not the final goal, no, but they are often the first whispers of the new state taking shape in the world of facts. They are echoes of your faith, not the source of faith, but its echo. And because they are echoes, you must receive them rightly. Do not make an idol of signs. Do not live by chasing them, counting them, demanding them. The one who chases signs is still asking the outer world to grant permission to believe. But the one who understands the law receives signs with quiet gratitude and continues resting in the unseen as the only cause. Signs are lovely. They are kind. They are often very tender proofs that the world is beginning to mirror your inward change, but they are servants, not masters. They follow the state. They do not create it. I have seen students delay their own peace because they were always asking, is this a sign? Is that a sign? Does this mean it is coming? Does that mean I have done it right? And in all this they left the state of fulfillment and re-entered the state of seeking. Be careful of this. The signs are not there to make you anxious. They are there to gladden the heart and then send you back into gratitude. The proper response to a sign is not nervous analysis. It is a soft thank you, a quiet smile, a deeper rest, as though the world had gently tapped your shoulder and said, yes, beloved, the arrangement is underway. There is a beautiful way to receive blessing, and I want you to hear it now because many miss this and exhaust themselves unnecessarily. When something good begins to happen, do not respond with shock and disbelief. Do not say, I cannot believe it, even in excitement. I know the impulse, I know the thrill, but learn a deeper response. Receive the blessing as natural. Receive it as fitting. Receive it as though it belongs to the order of things, for it does. When you speak with faith, feel with conviction, and rest in the Sabbath. Blessing is not interruption, it is continuation. It is not an exception to life. It is life behaving according to law. So when a favorable turn comes, even a small one, let your heart answer in this manner. Yes, thank you. Not dramatic astonishment, not fear that it may vanish, not grasping, simply gratitude, calm gratitude, warm gratitude, the kind that settles the body and makes the breath longer. This kind of gratitude nourishes the state that produced the sign. It says to the deeper self, I recognize your work, I trust your process, I accept this as the natural unfolding of what has already been done. And there is another thing I want you to feel tonight, especially if you are listening while the body grows heavy and the mind drifts towards sleep. You need not wait for complete outward evidence to taste relief. You need not wait for the final letter, the final balance, the final visible arrangement before permitting yourself peace. That is the old bargain of the senses. I will rest when I see. But the law teaches the opposite. You see because you have rested. You rejoice because you have accepted. You receive because inwardly you have already opened your hand. The joy that comes before evidence is not manufactured excitement. It is not forced cheerfulness. It is much gentler than that. It is a quiet sweetness, a soft inner brightness. Sometimes it comes as a simple sense that all is well, for no outward reason the mind can explain. Sometimes it comes as a little laugh, almost childlike, when the old fear tries to return and finds no home in you. Sometimes it is only a deep exhale, and the thought, it is done. Do not underestimate these moments. These are holy moments. They are the atmosphere of fulfilled prayer. They are signs not merely in the world, but in you. I tell you truly, when joy appears before the full harvest, the harvest is already near in consciousness. For joy does not bloom in a heart still clinging to the state of begging. It blooms in the heart that has accepted. It blooms in the one who has ceased arguing with appearances and has become inwardly persuaded. This is why I call joy the fragrance of faith. Faith may be invisible to others. Faith may be silent. Faith may have no documents to present and no figures to display, but joy gives it scent. Joy reveals that faith is alive. So if tonight, or tomorrow, or in the coming days, you feel a strange peace, where once there was dread, do not question it. If you open a letter with less fear than before, give thanks. If you notice that your speech has become softer and more certain, give thanks. If a small provision appears, give thanks. If a problem that once would have shaken you now passes like weather, give thanks. If you awaken in the night, and instead of panic, there is a calm remembrance of I am provided for, give thanks. These are not small things. These are signs that the state has shifted, and when the state shifts, the world must follow. I would have you become very gentle with yourself here. Do not demand constant ecstasy. Do not condemn yourself if joy comes and goes in waves. Let it come naturally as the tide comes. Your task is not to perform joy, but to permit it. The more you rest in the fulfilled state, the more joy will visit you of its own accord. And when it visits, make room for it. Let it sit beside you. Let it quiet your nerves. Let it soften your face. Let it carry you into sleep. Joy is not a distraction from the work. At this stage, joy is the work completed within. There is a warmth in accepting blessing as natural that changes everything. The old self receives good with suspicion, almost apologetically, as though life had made a mistake in his favor. But the awakened self receives good as rightful order, not arrogance, no, not entitlement in the worldly sense. I speak of spiritual naturalness, the deep knowing that supply is native to God. And if God is your own wonderful human imagination, then supply is not foreign to you. Peace is not foreign to you. Relief is not foreign to you. Harmony is not foreign to you. When these begin to appear, you are not stealing from life. You are returning to the order from which you wandered. So practice this inward posture. When blessing appears, however small, welcome it like dawn. The dawn does not ask permission to brighten the sky. It simply arrives according to law. In the same way, let your heart say, of course, not coldly, but tenderly. Of course, the law is moving. Of course, the word was heard. Of course, the unseen is clothing itself, in fact. This simple acceptance protects the state from the old habit of disbelief. It allows gratitude to deepen without turning into astonishment that uproots peace. And if you should find yourself half asleep as you listen, then let these words sink beneath effort. Let them fall where the conscious mind no longer struggles. You are not waiting for permission to be at peace. You are not waiting for the world to tell you that you may rest. The signs, the little mercies, the soft changes, the quiet openings, these are already here, as echoes of what you have accepted. Receive them gently. Bless them. But remain faithful, not to the sign, rather to the state from which the sign has come. I have often found that when a man truly enters gratitude, his world begins to soften around him. People speak differently. Time arranges itself differently. Even what once looked hostile begins to lose its harshness. This is not sentiment, it is law. Gratitude is a state, and every state has its corresponding world. Gratitude implies receipt. It implies completion. It implies trust in the invisible generosity of life. Therefore, the world must increasingly reflect those implications. It can do no other. It must become more generous to the one who inwardly dwells in gratitude. Now listen to how comforting this is, especially for one who has carried heavy burdens for a long time. You do not have to wait until everything is solved to begin living in thanksgiving. Begin with one small sign, one softening, one breath of relief, one moment in which you did not react as the old self. Give thanks for that, then another, then another. Soon you will discover that gratitude itself becomes a lamp through the night. It makes the unseen feel near. It makes the bridge of incidents feel friendly rather than frightening. It teaches the nervous system what faith feels like in the body. Warm, steady, unhurried, safe. And out of this gratitude, joy ripens. Not the loud joy of spectacle, but the deep joy of certainty. The kind that lets you rest your head and say, the work is underway, and I need not force it. The kind that allows sleep to come not as escape, but as trust. The kind that can bless a small sign without clinging to it, because it already belongs inwardly to the full harvest. This joy is a companion to the one who has learned to believe without hurry. It is the music of a heart reconciled to the law. So as blessings begin to appear, meet them with reverence and with ease. Do not chase them. Do not announce disbelief. Do not turn them into spectacle. Let them be what they are, echoes of faith, gentle confirmations, early fruits. Receive them, as one receives rain after sowing, not as a miracle against nature, but as nature fulfilling itself. And let your gratitude be soft, continuous, and sincere. Let it move through your speech and your silence alike. If tonight you can fall asleep with even a little of this joy, you have done much. If you can rest with the sense that something good is already in motion, that all is not only possible, but already arranged in the unseen, then you are in the right atmosphere. Stay there. Rest there. Bless every small sign there. For in that atmosphere, the fulfillment invisible becomes natural. And what is natural in consciousness must in time become visible in the world. And now, as this night draws softly to its close, I gather the whole teaching into one living thread, so that you may carry it with you into sleep without effort, without strain, and without confusion. You have heard me say that the word is creative, that feeling gives the word its power, that rest seals the act, that gentle persistence protects it, and that joy is the fragrance that rises when faith has truly taken root. This is the rhythm. Word, feeling, rest, persistence, joy. Not struggle, not pleading, not fear. A simple divine rhythm, moving quietly within you, even now. I speak to you now as one who has tested this law and found it faithful. I do not ask you to believe in a power outside yourself. I ask you to remember the power that has always spoken as your own awareness of being. I have seen what happens when a man uses his tongue carelessly, and I have seen what happens when he speaks from the depth of the I am. I have watched the old world yield. I have watched burdens dissolve. I have watched the heart become light before the evidence appeared, and then watched the evidence follow, as surely as dawn follows night. So tonight, I leave you not with theory, but with a decree to enter, a state to accept, and a peace to sleep in. Do not labor now. Do not analyze. Do not ask if you have done enough. If you have felt even for a moment the sweetness of relief, then the seed has been planted. If you have accepted, even gently, the possibility that your world can be reordered in harmony, then the law is already in motion. Let that be enough. Let grace be enough. Let this night be simple. And now I speak my final declaration, and I invite you to receive it as your own, not as words to repeat mechanically, but as truth to rest in. I speak it slowly, so the heart may hear what the mind need not grasp. I am free. I owe no man anything but love. All accounts in my world are balanced in divine order. I am one with infinite supply. Feel those words as you hear them. Let them fall beneath thought. Let them settle in the chest, in the breath, in the quiet center of your being. Do not force yourself to feel something dramatic. A little peace is enough. A soft loosening is enough. A gentler breath is enough. The law does not require strain. It responds to acceptance. If the old fear should whisper, let it whisper and pass. You need not wrestle with it tonight. You have already spoken. You have already chosen. The command has gone forth. And because the one who speaks and the power that fulfills are one, the work is done in the unseen. Time now is only the unfolding. Let time unfold. Let life arrange itself. Let the bridge of incidents appear in its own way, and in its own hour. So I say to you with great tenderness, do not check, do not measure, do not dig up the seed in the morning to see whether it has grown by night. Do not count signs anxiously. Do not revisit the old story to test your faith against appearances. Sleep in peace. Sleep as one who has handed the blueprint to the builder within. Sleep as one who has entered the Sabbath of fulfillment. Sleep as one who is no longer begging life, but blessing it. If you wake in the night, return not to the problem, but to the feeling. A single inward whisper is enough. I am free. Then let yourself drift again. If you rise in the morning and the world still shows remnants of the old state, do not be troubled. Bless what you see and remain faithful to what you have accepted. The shadow has no final authority. The state has the authority. And tonight, you have chosen the state. Now let your body become still. Let the jaw soften. Let the shoulders fall. Let the breath lengthen without effort. Let the day close behind you. Let every account, every concern, every unfinished question be laid down for the night in divine order. You are not abandoning your life. You are placing it in the law. I bless your sleep with peace. I bless your mind with quietness. I bless your heart with relief. I bless your world with order. I bless your world with power. And I bless your waking with the evidence of what has already been accepted in consciousness. May you sleep in the feeling of freedom. May you rest in the certainty of supply. May you awaken lighter than you were. May every breath tonight teach your body what faith feels like. May the deep mind receive only what is lovely, ordered, and true. And may the I am within you, which never sleeps, continue its perfect work while you rest. So now, be still. Be at peace. It is finished. Sleep in that knowing.